and welcome. Just like to remind people that this meeting won't be recorded for public consumption afterwards, so behave yourselves. Alex, can I have the Sederunt apologies?
Thanks, Leader. I've got apologies from Councillors Brodie, Carson, Gilroy, McGregor, Nicholl and Scobie. I think all other members are present and correct.
Thank you. Moving on to item 2, is there any declarations of interest? Do any members have any declarations? No? Thank you. Moving on to the minute meeting on the 6th of February. This is up for approval. I'm happy to move.
A second.
Thank you. If we can move on to item 4, this is a Treasury Management Strategy and Prudential Indicators. It's a report by the Head of Finance. It sets out the Council's Treasury Management Strategy for borrowing and investment to support the Council's capital investment strategy over the next 12 months. It asks the Council to agree prudential indicators which give assurance that the capital investment plans are prudent, affordable and sustainable. I understand it's a requirement of Local Government of Scotland Act 2003 and supporting regulations together with SIPFA codes of conduct. I'm sure all members agree that the Council has a good track record in Treasury management, thanks in no small measure to the professional expertise of Andy Ewart and Paul Garrett and Fiona McLaren. In addition to agreeing the prudential indicators and Treasury management strategy, we are required to monitor Treasury management activities and to assure ourselves that there are effective controls of the risks associated with those activities. I'm going to ask Fiona to give us a brief overview of the proposed strategy and indicators and to answer any questions which members may have. Fiona?
Sorry, I can't actually give an overview of this report because it's not actually my report. I'm standing in for Paul and Andy, who unfortunately can't be here today. But if there are any questions, I can take them and I'll come back to members with any responses.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Ian?
Thanks, Chair. Just commend the report's authors and our finance department. So long as I've been in this council, I think we've had, been able to have an assurance which I think is probably the envy of many other councillors. Welcome Fiona here today as evidence of the succession planning which we know is going on within the finance department. Can I ask a technical question which you might not be able to answer? The forecasts of interest rate increases, can you tell me where they came from, first of all? And secondly, there is an economic forward view within the body of this report which might just be a wee bit out of date because it doesn't give any indication of the implications of the potential market turmoil with the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. It's giving an overview of the other strong economies, but it seemed to me be a little bit out of date. I'm just wondering if you could comment on that, or if you can't, Fiona, if perhaps Paul could give us some kind of update on that.
Yeah, I'll get an update on that from Paul.
Okay, Ian Carruthers. Ian?
Thanks so much, Leader. I think absolutely same as Councillor Dick, really good report, very interesting. Pages 13 and 14 were too small a print for myself. If we could have an improvement for that, would certainly be slightly larger print, maybe just the age I'm getting to. In regards to National Housing Trust, maybe information that could be fed back. We originally agreed 9 million, that's down to 6.5 million. Just a reminder at some point, just how we actually got to that equation. I know it's quite a worthwhile project and it's quite fruitful, so just at some point, if we get that information back, please, Leader.
It's fine. Any other member? Sorry, Ivor.
It's just with regard to Appendix 2, 1.10, the debt rescheduling. Any ideas as to how much we may achieve if there is opportunities there? It says there that there's chance for savings. There's also, we're looking at taking their short-term investments and putting that into the capital. have we any figures for that so that we know when we're agreeing this strategy that this is what we want to do?
Fiona?
Again, I'm sorry, I'll have to come back to you on that one.
I haven't the figures like that, no, but okay, get back to you.
How can we agree a strategy if we don't know what we're going to get out of it?
Okay, Gavin?
I think that there will be opportunities, but I think following on from Councillor Dick's first statement, I think we would have to wait to see whether or not the events in Ukraine having the ongoing interest rates, the prices currently being priced in for the future 5 years show no real effect from Ukraine pricing. There was a drop initially in the stock market, but it's gone back up. But I think that we would have to take that on an ongoing basis. Also, we'd have to see how the Public Works Loan Board is pricing at this point. At this point, there's been no change to that price index, but that would be the first indication on a national basis that there would be a forthcoming rise in interest rates, both for saving and borrowing for us. At that point, our professional advisors would take a view as to whether or not it was safe and sustainable on the basis of our indicators to make a change in investment. But I think at this point it would be imprudent to be making any guess. But we certainly can do some scenario indications and bring those back to members as to what variations in the current rates currently being priced into the market are. We would have that information and be able to bring that back to you.
Is that okay, Ivor?
Yeah, I'll accept that. It's maybe an agreement in principle rather than a full agreement with us. But could we make sure that that information comes back to all members, you know, that's been asked? Because I think it helps.
Absolutely, and if individual groups then wish to follow up on that, we'd be happy to bring members of the team to the group to answer detailed questions.
Any other member? Andrew?
Thank you, Leader. It was with regard to the model that you're operating at present. I see it's been in use by this council for the last 4 years. Have we actually challenged it to see that it is still operating to the best practice that we have?
Gavin?
Yes, there's an annual table, Councillor, but it's produced of investment returns across local authorities in Scotland, and we're happy to provide that information to you, which does show that we are one of the best performing councils in Scotland, but happy to provide information to all members.
Alex?
Thanks, Leader. I can go back to the point that Councillor Hislop made. I think he suggested you agree this in principle. That would mean a report coming back. Can I suggest that the specific issue, as the Chief Executive has indicated, the specific issue which Councillor Hislop has raised, I don't think you can put figures to that at the moment. What we're saying is that as part of our strategy, we will keep an eye on debt rescheduling, and as and when we think it's appropriate to reschedule debt, we'll come back to the Policy and Resources Committee. So, Leader, my strong plea would be that you accept that the report's before you on the basis that there are caveats within the strategy itself, and that the strategy will require officers to come back and advise members of any proposed debt rescheduling. Would that be accepted?
Ivor?
Thank you, Leader. I think as long as we get an update through the year, because it's quite an interesting subject, this, and I think if it was coming back to P&R when those opportunities were there to keep us updated, it would be quite good.
Yep, that's fine. Ian Dick first, and then...
I think the council...
Stop putting your hand up at the same time.
The point Councillor Hislop makes, I think, is probably very important, particularly now when there's a possibility of rising interest rates. Personally speaking, through the budget process, I've had constant updates from the Head of Finance on this, because it's been a very important part of our budget formation for the last 2 or 3 years. And indeed, he's been, I would say, quite clever in being able to make use of the low interest rates and short-term borrowing to effectively balance our budget. Now we're into the possibility of interest rate rises. He's going to obviously have to change the strategy. Now that's when I think it's very important this council actually is able to look at that and analyse it in a council entirety, if you like, not just the narrow confines of the budget. But I think the point's well made, but I have every confidence that our Head of Finance will be able to do that.
Okay, Ian Crithers. Ian.
Thanks, Leader. Same point. I mean, when I'd read it, there's an assumption in there that anything that it will get reported back to Policy and Resources full council, but it's no explicit when it will get reported back. But I'm happy to take the reassurance that if there was a level of high risk, whether it was Ukraine or whether it was the outcome of the referendum, that it would be reported back at that point if there's a risk to the financial cases it contained.
Okay, you can have that assurance. Okay. Right, can we go to the recommendations? Can we agree 2.1, 2.2 and note 2.3? Thanks. If we move on to item 5, this is a late report. I don't know if you've had time to read it or not, or whether you would want 10 minutes, or are you quite happy with it? Councillor Maitland?
Please, could we have a small recess, Leader? I haven't had any chance to look at it at all.
Councillor Dykes?
Thank you, Leader. Could I suggest that we maybe continue with the rest of the agenda first, which obviously everybody's read, and maybe take this one at the end?
I think we'll have a 10-minute recess. You know, just so we can continue the business as is. 10 minutes. Before I go on to the next item, that I just learned that Councillor Carson's mother had died, and that's why he isn't here today. I'm sure the council will pass on their condolences to Finlay and his family. Yeah. If we move on to item 5, which this report has been circulated separately to members, and it's a relatively short paper which follows on from the decision we took at Policy Resources Committee on the 18th of March to allocate funding towards the Dumfries Learning Town project. Rather than wait until the next Education Committee meeting to agree the national enabling costs, the paper is before us today for a decision which, if agreed, will allow us to get on with the job of recruiting relevant staff and beginning the initial work. A detailed analysis of any spend will be presented to the Education Committee at its meeting on the 27th of May 2014 for members to scrutinise. With Claire and Colin here to answer any questions members may have. Jill?
Thank you, Leader. It was just really to declare an interest before we started on this. I didn't have this at the beginning of the meeting, so I hadn't actually read it. I just wanted to point out that my husband's a director in a company that's actually on the South West Scotland Hubco framework, so I just wanted to make that point. However, I have no intention of leaving the meeting. It was just to declare that interest. And I have got a question I'd like to ask as well, if that's possible.
Okay, thanks. I meant to say, I take it we're doing delegation from the Education. Yep, okay, thanks. Members? Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, Leader. My question would be, sir, paragraph 3.5. No problems with the proposals, Leader, but paragraph 3.5, the combined cost of these initial appointments is £90,000 per annum for the duration of the Schools for the Future programme. What duration are we talking about, sir?
Claire?
With respect to duration of the programme, that's as detailed in the policy and resource papers that were presented on the 18th of March. But so we're looking at a 10-year capital programme to implement the full Dumfries Learning Town solution.
Ian? Sorry, Alistair, you went back in.
No, just to thanks, sir.
Ian? I think it's very short notice to say, at least I have to say that, Leader. I have to say that, Leader, just to start off. It's short notice, and I don't think we've really had enough time to consider it properly. I picked up on the same point as what Alice has picked up on there in regards to the timescales. Is there such a need that this has to be considered today? I mean, what is the real case for it being considered today against May? It's a humongous project. We've agreed in principle to the basis of moving on with Dumfries Learning Town. I just think it's very, very short notice. We could, even if we did this last night, we've not had a chance to discuss it properly at all.
Claire?
Apologies for that, and I do appreciate your patience about this. why we're keen to take this paper is to give full transparency to Council to see about the immediate appointments. We will obviously go to May Committee to do a full and detailed analysis. You'll get the full chance and the papers beforehand to review that. It is quite important because as with any auditable process, we need to have cost codes in place before we can start recruitment, which is only fair and right. We also want to make sure that the projects are de-risked, so we want to do some investigation studies. And until we actually get specific budget approval, we can't commence with those. So while it seems like a short time, I can do a lot of work in 2 or 3 months before the Education Committee's approvals and minutes are out. So I would really be grateful for this approval to keep the momentum of this project going.
Any other members? Jill, sorry.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to ask a question about the staff that would be put in place and the term of the employment. I would have liked to have suggested that they should be on fixed term contracts, and I just wondered whether or not that was what was going to actually happen.
Claire?
Happy to take that point on board, and I'll discuss it with HR colleagues about how we actually manage that, if that's okay. But I appreciate the point that you're making.
Okay, Ian, Dick.
Yeah, I completely endorse what Claire has said, and it's absolutely essential we get this into place. I don't think we can afford to drag our heels into the next Education Committee, and which I think is now May, because the April one was moved forward. So I would be more than happy to support the recommendations.
Okay, Ian.
I think, Leader, I don't know if but I would like to hear what more actual members were thinking in regards to. So, like, I'll come back to you. I take on board what Claire's saying, and I take Claire at a word in regards to that. But I still think it's very short notice. The fact we've just got it here, I would like to have had a chance to actually debate this properly with my group as well, because there's been a lot of concerns raised in regards to how quick it's been laid in our lap. Don't like to make knee-jerk decisions, and I feel as if I'm being pushed into that. So we maybe like to at least hear what other members are thinking.
Okay, Jane.
Thank you, Leader. Paragraph 3.3, it's just the fact that the team includes 7 FTE staff with a combined annual cost of 346. The recommendation talks about 301. I wonder if you could just explain the difference, please.
Happy to do that. Yeah, the recommendations 2.1 first point should read 346, not 301.
Apologies for that. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. It was just a wee bit of if you could afford any more detail on the other enabling costs. It's noted in 3.6 and 3.7, just that it's not likely to exceed 300k, and I appreciate the detail of that will come to the Education Committee. But is there any detail you can afford at present in terms of what that would be used for?
So when starting any project on a new build site, what you want to do is do a desktop study, so that reviews all the literature and information in relation to the site. We've already done a significant part of that, but we want to commission the next step of that. We'd also look in line with civil engineering and structural engineering guidance to do some investigations on the site. We know they've got the contaminated land aspect. We want to scope out exactly where that is. We want to see if there's any methane emissions. So there's certain items as per any normal project preparatory. And where's that useful? Because it helps with briefing the design teams. It's looking at design solutions, the cost aspect, and most importantly, the risk register around it. So the more information we can gather from all available sources and looking at the site, the better for the project in terms of pre-planning.
Yeah.
Just one other point I probably should have made. My reason for being keen to support the recommendations is partly because as the paper says, this is an enabling costs. This allows Claire's department to work up the fully costed proposals, which I think is pointed out in 3.6, in order to get a full detailed exposition to the Education Committee in May. Without that, it would put it back a couple of months, I would have thought.
Okay, members, can we go to the recommendations? Sorry, Jill.
Sorry, just on the back of what Claire said in the answer to a question just now, I did ask the question about fixed term contracts, and Alex was nodding his head and he said you'd take that into consideration. I want to be clear that that decision is going to be made before you make any appointments. It's very important that you make the determination that it's going to be fixed term contracts before you actually appoint somebody to a post. And that's not what you said in the response to a question that somebody else asked just now. And I would just like to point out as well, it is a late paper, and I appreciate the importance of the late paper, but it's disappointing that we get a late paper and then the existing staff team amounts increased by £45,000. And I know the leader apologised for that, but it is important to try and get, in particular, the finance side of things correct when you present a late paper. Thanks.
Gavin.
In answer to that question, there'll be two categories. Obviously, if it's an internal candidate, they'll be on for the life of the project and then returning back to the original work. And give assurance, as this is funded, will be funded at a capital, it will be a fixed term contract. That is how we do fixed term, the capital related contracts, and I will ensure that is how it's advertised. But hopefully we'll be able to get candidates from within the council to undertake this work, but obviously we're looking for the best possible candidates to support the team. So therefore, if it's an internal candidate, they will return to their substantive post. If it's an external candidate, we'd advertise it on a fixed term basis.
I'm happy with that, thank you.
Jane.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm sort of thinking as I go along, because again, this has just been put in front of me. I haven't had a chance to ask an officer this, which I would have done. But what I'm really trying to work out is, what is the effect of deciding this? We're asked to agree to use the capital funding we've already allocated, but nevertheless, what's the education department going to bring to this decision? What's the education committee going to be doing? We're allocating the money. We're saying we want one project manager. We're saying how much it's going to cost, and I don't quite understand what they're going to bring to it.
I think, to be fair to poor Claire, I specifically asked for the report. But what we agreed at Policy and Resources with the agreement of the allocation of capital, the council's process that then went back to the individual service committee for allocation. Officers would be in danger of committing expenditure before the decision-making process had been taken care of, and I thought given the scale, the complexity, and importance of the project, that was an unnecessary risk that people could accuse officers of committing money with due process of the council. So I apologise. It should have come far quicker than you received it today, and I will deal with that matter. But I did ask for the report because I did believe it was inappropriate for officers on a scale, on a project so important to the council, to be perhaps accused of working out with decision making. And also, that would then allow full scrutiny to go ahead in May and not ask for a special meeting of the Education Committee.
Ivor?
Chair, it's just with regard to the 346,000 per annum. It says it's largely been met on a one-off basis from the revenue reserves. I take it the rest is out of the revenue account, and how much was that, and how much will we be able to save from actually transferring this money to capital?
I would have to defer that question back to Paul Garrett and ask for his response on that.
Yep. It was all met out of existing revenue resources. So therefore it was not being drawn out of capital at this point because members had not yet committed capital to the scheme.
Okay, Ian and then Stephen.
Thanks, Leader. Just so I'm absolutely clear on what we're agreeing on fiscal through today, existing staff team, so it was a one-off funding agreed originally, so we're agreeing to support that on an ongoing basis as a 301k. This is my understanding. Just reassure me if this is right, so I know what I'm actually agreeing to. The further staff recruitment of 90k is quite clear, and the further enabling costs in regards to preparatory work, site investigations, is this what we're talking about?
What we're asking members is give the authority to expend money agreed from the existing capital allocation at this point with full disclosure back to the May Committee of Education for proper scrutiny. So it gives us the ability not to spend money in those allocations, but that will then come back for proper ratification by the Education Committee and scrutiny by the Education Committee in May. So it's a permission for us to spend money, and these are the indicative amounts that would be within those areas that we'd wish to spend. I wouldn't anticipate that. I mean, obviously, existing staff teams are 300,000 for the year. It's just the ability to show you transparency that those are the allocations we would be looking to spend money within at that point. But we can't tell you exactly how much because some of the enabling costs might be done immediately now.
Ian?
I take that on board, and these are actually indicative costs. I wanted reassurance. If that's the case, if you look at an existing team that have done a lot of work, they've produced really well, then that would be a risk to remove that, and that's what I'm trying to get into my head if that's the case. So just for these figures are maybe indicative, but for reassurance, what I was saying initially, that is the case because it was a one-off funding. We're agreeing to put these people in a more permanent place. The 90k is extra human resource, so the 300k is for preparatory works.
Leader, can we maybe look at this in context? The council approved its capital strategy and it's for 10 years and its capital programme for the forthcoming 3 years at the Policy and Resources Committee on the 18th of March. You'll have an existing staff team in place who have been doing the preparatory work to enable the council to agree that programme. That staff team has been costing £346,000 per annum, which has been met from revenue reserves on an ongoing basis. Technically, we're now asking that this team of people, plus 2 others, plus some enabling work, the cost of them be met from the capital programme. The capital programme has already been allocated, so the Education Committee have that under full control. What we're basically asking members, and it's a technical, financial and governance issue, is there are sums of money there going to be spent. It's been allocated, but technically the Education Committee have not said, yeah, go ahead. Now, we're not prejudging what the Education Committee are going to be doing because the money is already there. The Education Committee will agree a programme. They will agree a programme of works. We're asking that these monies now be allocated from capital to enable us, firstly, to do a lot of the work that's required to put the report to the Education Committee, and secondly, to ensure that the staff continue, those existing staff continue in post, and we advertise and put in train a recruitment process for 2 additional members of staff. This will be fully reported to the Education Committee when it meets in May. The amounts of money spent between now and May will not be £730,000. It'll be probably a sixth of that because the money will be being spent up front. Technically, there has been some discussion at officer level about whether or not, on the basis of the P&R committee, we would just proceed. The view was taken by the Chief Executive that he did not want officers to be going out spending money without a transparent audit trail for members to follow in 5-6 years' time when people start saying you started that project 4 months before you had full authority or 3 months before you had full authority to do it. So can we just put it into a perspective, please? The Chief took the very sensible view that officers would be at risk in the future if they incurred expenditure without a fully transparent audit trail for members to look at. Because it may not be the officers who are getting the money and it may not be the members who are here who will be asking that question in several years' time. We are learning from our experiences from PPP and PFI.
That's very clear for me now, Leader, and happy to go with the recommendations.
Thank you, Colin.
I mean, I think it's worth making the point that when we set the capital investment strategy at Policy and Resources, we didn't just pluck the figures out of the air. And the figures that we presented to as an administration on the day were figures that we had developed with officers over a long period of time, I have to say, and an awful lot of discussion, an awful lot of meetings, a lot of scrutiny from an administration's point of view before we put forward the administration's point. Now, as we go forward, and is always the case with big projects like this in years ahead, those figures will change, but we were very clear, certainly in the year 2014-15 allocation, what the funding actually was for. Now, I think as Alex says, there's obviously the technical issue of committees having to sign off additional actual spending itself, but we were very clear when we put the papers to Policy and Resources what those figures were and what those figures were being allocated towards. But what we were also very clear about, and the leader made a statement to this effect, is we want to get on and deliver this project for the people of Dumfries as quickly as possible, and the clock is ticking on that project. I don't want to be sitting here in 2 or 3 years' time being told that project's late because of decisions taken by members that held that up. We want people to get on with the work and actually deliver the schools that are fit for the future.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we agree with recommendations? Is there any other, is there an amendment to them? Stephen, an amendment? Sorry? Right, okay.
Just a quick housekeeping question. Given that obviously we'd encourage internal applications for the posts that are being advertised, and these are fixed term posts that would revert back to their substantive positions, the posts that become vacant as a result of that, should that happen, are they going to be advertised as a fixed term base? It's just really to tie up all the loose ends, so are we leaving a gap that needs filled, as it were?
Evan?
Yes, we have staff policy arrangements agreed with the trade unions on how such backfilling would occur through the process. So therefore, yes, we have well established means of dealing with these issues.
Okay, good. Sorry, John.
I'm happy to agree the recommendations, but we've got to scrutinise what's put in front of us. I don't object to the recommendations, but I think it's important that we had to scrutinise what we had been given, and that's what we've done today, so happy with that.
Okay, members agree? Right, moving on to item 6. This was a report that was deferred. So this report was deferred from Policy Resources Committee at its last meeting to enable members to consider the implications of the proposed childcare voucher scheme for the Council. Paul Clarkin offered to speak to any political group who wish to have clarification on it. There are obviously some financial implications for the Council in the introduction of the scheme, in that the cost of administration of about £13,000 per annum. While the cost of providing the vouchers themselves can only be an estimate, members have been provided with what officers regard as projected details of the costs. These are based on historic levels of maternity leave and potential uptake of childcare vouchers. In paragraph 3.6 of the report, I am advised that these costs can be met from the existing budget. The Council's committed to supporting our workforce and reducing barriers to employment. The administration believes that the implementation of the childcare voucher scheme will provide choice for our staff and demonstrates the Council's support to them. The UK Government has indicated they will be introducing a tax-free childcare scheme in the autumn of 2015, and should that actually happen, our staff will be provided with the choice of which scheme they wish to participate in. However, that is some way off and makes an interesting assumption about the next election. So I would therefore hope that members will agree to the Council to introduce a voucher scheme now and complete what I believe is unfinished business. I also hope that the members who raised questions at Policy and Resources have had the opportunity of having all of their questions answered by Paul before today. But if not, I am sure he will answer any further questions which members may have. Members? Ian?
Thanks, Chair. I still do have many, and I have no intentions of holding this up at this committee because I very much support the recommendations and to have it introduced. The principal area which I had discussed with the head of human resources before was the suggested cost figures there, which I still think are worthy of discussion, and I would hope maybe we'll get an opportunity to do that at some point in the near future. It principally revolves around the issues of the costs, which, as I understand it, the Council say would be the cost of maintaining childcare vouchers while people are on statutory sick pay, maternity pay and paternity pay. Now, my understanding from the rules, which I've checked through there, is there's an opportunity for enhanced maternity pay. I'm not quite sure about the statutory sick pay, but with the enhancement, you can bring it up to such a level that the members can maintain purchase of the vouchers as a cash benefit throughout the period of maternity pay. And the question is whether that would allow the Council and the employee to benefit fully from the tax and national insurance relief, which would offset a lot of the charges. The other point I had made and I would like to explore further at some point is whether the actual benefits to both the Council and the employee while they're making use of the the vouchers would in itself not produce savings to the council, which again would offset the costs. So my overall thing there is that I feel that there's still a good deal of scrutiny required on these cost figures there. I still feel that there's a possibility we might be looking at either lower costs or perhaps even, if we can explore the possibility of enhanced salary during maternity leave, as to whether not just reduce these costs, but perhaps still produce some revenue. I don't know, these are questions which I don't want to hold up today, but I'm just flagging it up to Human Resources. I'd like to probably discuss that at some point in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Ian. Jane?
Thank you. This is a question to which I really absolutely don't know the answer because I haven't had time to look it up. But it's a question to the political leaders about whether or not this was placed in their manifestos. So would the public have known that this is what was going to come forward? Wonder if I could possibly ask you that in the first instance. I've got a couple of other questions.
Okay, well, I can't speak for the, Brian, but it's always been their intention, to go forward with the childcare voucher scheme. Okay, Stephen.
Thank you. I don't think that completely answers my question in terms of the public perception. I wonder if...
Well, Councillor Maitland, you can tell the public that the Labour Group is fully supportive of the childcare voucher scheme, and always has been.
I have no doubt of that, but it's...
Thank you.
I wonder if I could then ask, please...
Councillor Maitland, I've moved on to somebody else, sorry. I didn't understand you. What another question?
Yes, sorry, I did say. My apologies for not making myself completely clear. That was the first question. The second question is that my understanding is there's no budget allocation. There was nothing made in the budget, no allocation in the budget. Is that correct?
I think it says in the paper, actually, it's been met from existing budgets, so it doesn't come into account.
Thank you, Leader. There's a few points in this particular report that I don't quite understand why it's coming to us at this stage. According to the report in the background papers, this was first discussed in 2009, and it's taken all this time before it actually comes to this committee for a decision on this. And within 16 months, this particular scheme will be outdated by the fact that the government's bringing in its own scheme, in which, as the report states, that probably more staff would require to transfer to the implemented scheme coming in August 2015. So I don't know why this has been brought to us after all these years and within 16 months of the scheme possibly being scrapped. So I have concerns there, and especially with the fact that it is going to have a cost implication to this council. Once we've set this scheme up, we will not be able to retract this scheme. We will have to keep this open for continuously, as long as, even if we have one member of staff that is signed up to the scheme and does not wish to transfer. So we will always have administration costs involved with this from the moment it is set up. So I do have concerns about it. I understand the report and why we're looking to set this up as benefit for employees. But again, it's a cost to this council that is not necessary, because in 16 months' time, the government scheme will have no cost to our council and is open to all staff members as well. So therefore, I do have real concerns about it, because in the public conception of this, is especially when we're making budget cuts, the next 2 financial years, as we have stated, are going to be much, much harder for this council. So services are going to be cut even more and more and more. And yet we're taking an opportunity now to cost this council a minimum of £13,000 and possibly more. And it states in the report that no financial provision has been made for this scheme. So I really have concerns about this going forward at this stage.
Well, we will be making a decision today, one way or another. The possibility of being scrapped in 16 months' time, I think that, I alluded to that, it all depends on elections and that, and way forward when we can't do business like that. It's always been, it's something that we've been hanging about here for years and years. I think you made the point since 2009. This is a political decision. We won't be making a decision on that as on a political basis. Now, if there wasn't a political will before, I would hope now there is a political will to move it forward. Councillor Davison?
Thank you, Leader. I'll take members who were here at the time back to the marathon budget setting day, the last budget before the elections. And right at the start of that meeting, if memory serves me correctly, I asked if we could in fact get a report on this very issue. I'm glad to see that we now appear to be in a position where we can get this thing bolted down once and for all. My view is that I think it is a good thing to do for our staff, and I also think that it is, in the round, in the context of our £300 million budget, a very modest overall cost for the benefits that I think it will actually accrue to us from implementing it. We can't possibly predict what's going to happen in the future. I think what we need to do is look at the measures that we can put in place today and that are under our control, and this certainly is one. And I do think that the report is quite clear on the benefits that this will have for our staff for, as I say, a very modest cost and a very affordable one. I welcome it. I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Colin, then Andy.
Thanks, Leader. I mean, obviously we are the only local authority in the whole of Scotland that doesn't actually have a childcare voucher scheme, and it's certainly something that I'm not proud of, I have to say. And people have asked the question, why do we have to consider it at this point? I think those that actually read the paper will have seen in paragraph 3.1 the statement, once the UK government scheme is in place, the council would not be able to introduce a scheme. Therefore, this represents the last opportunity to offer a childcare voucher scheme. I think that's perfectly clear now. I think, as the Leader says, there are lots of ifs and buts about the next election, and Councillor Peacock makes an assumption that in 16 months' time the government will introduce a scheme. We don't know that, but what we do know, we don't know that, but what we do know is that we're the only local authority at the moment that does not provide this for our staff, and I don't think that's something we should be proud of, and therefore we should be getting on with completing what frankly is unfinished business. And in answer to Councillor Maitland's question about what the Labour Party position is, it was a Labour government that introduced childcare vouchers, so I think the clue's there.
Andy?
Thanks, Leader. Just a couple of comments on this. One, obviously, the staff morale. This is no end of good for that, and the staff are obviously well behind this. But there's also a fairness issue here. We're moving into an integrated world, working with the NHS and external partners. The NHS and Dumfries and Galloway have a childcare voucher scheme. So that would mean the significant number of employees that we have in social work, DG First and health and wellbeing teams would actually be at a disadvantage to their colleagues in the NHS. So it's as straightforward. Whilst obviously I support the scheme, and I always have done, just for its own benefit, but there is that added issue that we would actually start off an integrated process with one set of staff enjoying one benefit and the other set of staff not. And that would clearly be a nightmare scenario for staff integration. And the other thing I was just going to ask you, just for some clarification from either Paul or Mr Branney, is that the figures that are being quoted here are for those who are on some form of statutory leave, and that's in terms of the Equality Act, and I fully understand that. But there are other benefits for staff who are actually not on maternity leave, who can actually benefit from this scheme, and I believe there is a net saving to the council, albeit a small one, through that process. So that would actually offset the variable amount that it's going to cost, because we don't have a magic ball. We don't know who's going to be off on statutory sick pay. We don't know who's going to be off on maternity pay. But we do know which staff have actually got children just now, and they would benefit from it. And the other thing, just very, very quickly at the end, is that the proposed government scheme is an incremental one. That's even if they get into power or stay in power, and they then continue to abide by the promise that they're making just now. So we have to take the bird in the hand, which is this current one, rather than a bird flying about in free air. Okay, thank you.
Paul.
Leader, we calculated the potential financial impact that's in paragraph 3.6 on the basis of taking the maternity costs, converting that to maternity days and full periods. We then offset the NI savings to the council and added in the voucher costs and coming to the overall financial implication for that. So we have actually taken into account all of those costs in the illustration.
Okay, Ivor.
Chair, it's a governance point. I never considered this until Dennis said, I have a child, would I qualify for this, and as such, should I be declaring an interest and actually leave the room?
Only if you choose to do so.
Leader, you're dealing with a principle here. I don't think members have got an issue with the principle.
Okay, Ian.
Thanks, Leader. I mean, just to say that with, as per the comments at Policy and Resources, we do actually support this. It wasn't in a manifesto, can be absolutely clear about that, for Councillor Maitland's information. But we do support it. We see more benefits than disbenefits when it comes to this, sick pay being one of them, what Andy's touched on briefly. So we will support this as we go forward.
Thank you. Any, Archie?
Thanks, Chair. I think there's also a benefit outside the council, and that £1,200 worth of vouchers are going to other employees. So there is a massive benefit in actually taking this forward. So I'll be supporting this fully.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Leader. With reference to 312, I'm seeking clarification of the statement that under the proposed government scheme, single-parent families and families with more than one child in childcare will be better off under that scheme. I accept the fact it is a proposed scheme, yes?
I mean, do you want to answer that, Paul?
Leader, there's actually been some changes that we were unaware of when we detailed the original report. The people who will benefit under the scheme as proposed as an interim scheme until the other scheme comes in or not would in fact be where only one is employed by the council. They would remain to benefit from the scheme. Since the original information was published, the new scheme, the amount of benefit per child has increased to a proposed £2,000, which have been over the value of the two individual employees' benefits, which was less than that. That would be £1,860. So there's a slight change there.
Okay. Jill.
Thank you, Leader. I think all the discussions about what may or may not happen in the future is actually a red herring in all of this. We need to discuss the paper that's in front of us and make our decision based on that. And I am more than happy to support the paper that's in front of us today. I think it would be good for our staff, and that's all that's important.
Thank you. Can we move to the recommendations? We've considered the information. Can we agree the childcare voucher scheme? Yep. And can we agree officers 2.2 carry out the necessary procurement? Sorry, John, do you want to?
Yes, sorry, I do. You're asking whether we agree, and you wouldn't look at me, so I'm simply offering.
I'm sorry, Jane. Wipe your eyes. I'm trying to read and then look at the recommendations, and I can't look at you at the same time, unfortunately.
Leader, no. I think it must be the case that there should at least be a clear indication that some of us don't actually agree with spending this in advance of the government scheme coming through. And therefore, I would propose that we consider the information and that we decided it should not be introduced by the Council as part of its reward and recognition strategy. That's basically it. My reasons are that there is no budget allocation in 14-15. It comes out of the contingency fund on which we have, it is exactly that, it is a contingency fund, there could be pressures there, and we do not consider this a priority which has been laid in front of the public as part of the Council's proposals and Council's plan. So
do you have a second?
Yes, Chair, I'll second that.
Okay, thanks. So I think Ian proposed that we go with the recommendations, and Rob seconded it, I think. And we've got Jane and Stephen. Okay, can we go to the vote? Read the amendment.
Yeah. Leader, as I understand the situation, we had a motion from Councillor Dick, seconded by Councillor Davidson, that the Council go ahead and adopt the proposed childcare voucher scheme as part of the Council's reward and recognition strategy, and that the officers be authorised to carry out the necessary procurement of a voucher scheme operator. The amendment by Councillor Maitland, seconded by Councillor Peacock, is that we do not introduce that scheme. Councillor Maitland has given a number of reasons. I'm assuming they're not part of her amendment. They are. Do not.
Sorry, can I just seek clarification on that? And, you know, part of the, you know, what you were saying, Jane, was based on a scheme that isn't there at the moment, and it's based on something that may or may not happen in the future. So that's part of your amendment, that something that may or may not happen, something in the future.
I'm basing my information upon the report in front of us, Leader.
So the amendment by Councillor Maitland, seconded by Councillor Peacock, is that we do not introduce a child care voucher scheme on the basis that there is no specific budget allocations for that scheme. The costs will be met from a contingency fund, and that there is a scheme about to be introduced at national government level.
And in addition to which, it doesn't form part of the Council's plans that were laid in front of the Council and agreed by the Council.
Okay. So, does everyone understand the motion and the amendment? Basically, the motion is to introduce the scheme. The amendment is not to introduce the scheme for the reasons detailed by Councillor Maitland. Leader.
Motion.
Deputy Leader.
Motion.
Councillor Bell.
Motion.
Councillor Blake.
Motion.
Councillor Ian Carruthers.
Motion.
Councillor Carden Carruthers. Councillor Davidson.
Motion.
Councillor Dempster.
Motion.
Councillor Dick.
Motion.
Councillor Diggle.
Motion.
Councillor Dryborough.
Motion.
Councillor Dykes. Councillor Ferguson.
Motion.
Councillor Forster.
Motion.
Councillor Geddes. Councillor Grimm.
Motion.
Councillor Yen.
Motion.
Councillor Hislop.
Motion.
Councillor Lever.
Motion.
Councillor McCortry.
Motion.
Councillor McClung.
Motion.
Councillor McComb.
Amendment.
Councillor McCutcheon.
Motion.
Councillor McKee.
Motion.
Councillor Maitland.
Amendment.
Councillor Mayo.
Motion.
Councillor Marshall. Councillor Martin.
Motion.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Motion.
Councillor Peacock.
Amendment.
Councillor Prentice.
Amendment.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Stitt.
Motion.
Councillor Syme.
Motion.
Councillor Tate.
Motion.
Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Motion.
Councillor Ted Thompson.
Motion.
Councillor Tuckfield.
Motion.
Councillor Witts.
Motion.
Councillor Wood. Councillor Wiper. Not present. One, two, three, four. The motion is carried by 36 votes to 4. There are 40 members present.
Okay, thank you. We can move on to item 7. This is a report that comes from the Scrutiny and Performance Committee and makes recommendations to the Council on its findings on the review of performance indicators for Council priorities and commitments. I made clear when I was elected that as leader of this administration would operate an inclusive council, and we took the view that a scrutiny and performance role within the council should be undertaken by opposition groups. I'm therefore going to ask Ivor, the chair of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee, to take us through his report and 8 recommendations, and then open the matter up for members' consideration. Ivor.
Thank you, Leader. Now, when these are normally presented, you do the changes and the mistakes. With regard to Appendix 2 membership, Councillor Dykes has been missed out in the current one. So if that could be taken as a change that needs to be put in. Leader, this is the first of the committee reviews to be presented to full council. I'd like to thank all members past and present who have contributed to this paper. The recommendations are laid out in page 44 of the papers, and the objectives that we've looked at are objective 1, to make the information more understandable to the general public who are not as involved in council activities, and to give a fuller flavour of what we're actually comparing it to. There's still a bit of further work to be done on that one with regard to public performance reporting, and that's coming through, I think it's June to August time that we'll see a report coming back, a survey that's been done on that. Objective 2 that we have is to make targets realistic but challenging as well. I think that's one of the things we felt. We don't want to set too easy a target, but we don't want to be setting too difficult a one that isn't achievable. And objective 3 that we have is how we're going to actually improve the reporting between service and area committees so that we can identify better practice, and hopefully one will help the other one move forward. The recommendations have no financial implications but are targeted to improving processes and improving report information. I would ask the committee to approve the recommendations as tabled.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Ivor. Any members? So, if we go to the recommendations, can we agree it's basically the 8 items in page 44, 45, and go forward that? This is, if we move on to item 8, which is the 4th periodic review, I'm not going to go through all the other part of it. This is the 4th in a series of reports regarding the statutory periodic review of the scheme for the establishment of community councils in Dumfries and Galloway. The review has been subject to consultation, in particular with community councils. Officers have set out in the report proposed changes to the existing scheme where appropriate, and have given an explanation where it has not been possible to incorporate any particular proposed change. When the Council considered the scheme prior to it going out for final consultation at our meeting on the 28th of November, we agreed to receive a further report on how the Council should address proposals from the Lawburn Community Council for changes to the boundaries of community councils in the Dumfries area. Appendix 1 to the report sets out the proposals for community engagement for this process. The theme recent council conference was Going Local, Scotland's Future, and what is clear is that in Scotland our approach is out of step with the rest of Europe. I think Jane was as well and nodding her head at the time that was being discussed. In terms of local democracy, which lacks the constitutional status which it has in most of the Western democracies. Community councils were established in 2 very short sections of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973, and it's acknowledged that there is a need to look at the powers of these statutory bodies. What we have done in terms of the 4th periodic review is to acknowledge the importance of community councils to the democratic process in Dumfries and Galloway, and have provided them with a set of governance rules, since with empowerment there must come responsibility. I'm sure that Alex will answer any questions which members have. Open to members. Jill?
Thank you, Leader. A number of community councils in my ward, or in our ward, and there's 4 of us represent that ward, have actually made representation through members as well, in particular on the paper that's in front of us today. And I did pass on those questions to Harry Hay. I thought he was the officer that was taking us through the report today, and I just wondered if he could give me an update on the answers to the questions.
Alex?
Leader, I know that Councillor Dykes very kindly produced some information for my colleagues, Harry Hay and Sheila Dressler, whom I would introduce to members and pay tribute for the amount of work they've done in the community consultation, in particular on this. I thought we'd answer those questions offline. Many of them are the fact that an individual or individual community councils don't necessarily agree. What we've had to do is take a wide-ranging view and look at all of the views that are set forward. I think most of these issues will have been addressed in the appendix to the report, where we've explained why we've not taken on board certain suggestions that came forward. If the councillor has any detail, I'm sure Harry or Sheila could answer the absolute detail.
Thank you. Jane?
3.6.
3. Page that, someone?
6. Paragraph 3.6. I just noticed that we were talking about writing to the Scottish Government asking it to consider legislative support for an enforceable code of governance conduct. And in 2.6, we simply say that it will continue to be optional. And I just would suggest to you that I think we probably should write and ask for that. And it should be reflected in the recommendations. Or I was going to ask you whether you should.
Leader, the members recall this was a much debated issue when we discussed the Community Empowerment Act, and members took the view that, as you said yourself in your introduction, Leader, with empowerment there must come some responsibility, and I know it's a subject dear to members' hearts. Unfortunately, there's no proposal at present to introduce a legislative framework, nor to give local authorities any power to legislate over community councils. I think that would be entirely inappropriate because they are separate statutory bodies. What we have done and will continue to do is, in discussions with the government, point out that when they create these bodies, they require to ensure that there is a framework regulating these bodies, and that at the moment that what we have are basically, they are not registered in any way other than as a community council. We will be creating other bodies which will be able to offer to take over local authority work in terms of the Community Empowerment Act, and that's very much being brought to the government's attention in every consultation we have. If members want to make a specific representation to the Scottish Government, we're quite happy to take that away.
John?
Thank you, Leader. I hear exactly what Mr Haswell is saying, and yes, I did have a discussion with Harry Hay offline, but I just want to be clear that the community councils who have made representation, in particular some of the questions that were asked, do actually get the feedback that's required to the answer to the question, and I would like that assurance.
Harry?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Yeah, I can confirm that the correspondence that we received sight of this week, we will give a detailed response to all the issues raised and deal with them as appropriate. I can give that assurance.
And that all members representing that particular area will be notified of that response as well, please.
Yes, I can confirm that all members of Mid and Upper Nithsdale will get copied into that response.
Okay, Councillor Smith, Colin first and then Andrew.
Thanks, Leader. It was just to say, I mean, I welcome this report. Obviously, the concern I raised at the meeting, I think in November, was a general concern that there are areas of Dumfries and Galloway that currently don't have community councils, and we should be trying to find a solution to that particular problem. Now, I could only comment at that time on my own ward area and the proposals from Lorburn Community Council, and I think this is a good way forward in terms of actually consulting with not only existing community councils, but actually finding a way to consult with the communities that don't have a community council at the moment. I think the proposals in the paper are positive in that front, because that was always a difficulty. Our consultation was primarily aimed at community councils, and if you don't have an area that doesn't have one, then it becomes very difficult to know exactly what those people in those communities actually want. So I think the work plan, the proposals in the paper are very positive. I'll just be interested to see what the response we get in relation to the Dumfries proposal. I think it was a rather unfortunate article, an inaccurate article in yesterday's Dumfries and Galloway Standard, effectively suggesting that we were agreeing to proposals today, but what we're actually doing is being asked to agree to a consultation process, and I'll be interested to see what other community councils' response is to the proposals from Lorburn Community Council, and look forward to that report in due course.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Leader. It's just to basically ask Harry Hay that when we do meet, that we ensure that we have the boundary maps in place that are accurate, and that we get the opportunity to take them back to our community councils to ensure that they're happy with them at the same time. Thank you.
Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, Leader. Particular interest is to hear your reference, to the establishment of community councils. It was as far back as the 1973 Act, and some of us would say that the blunt fact of the matter was that they were parachuted in about a minute to midnight as something akin to a panic measure. And as against that background, I would suggest that community councils have performed by and large more than creditably over the years. I feel, quite frankly, Chair, that Leader, that we've missed on occasions the opportunities that were to revamp and to give them, what some of us would argue would be a more meaningful and more powerful role. And the latest instance of that, of course, would be on the back of community empowerment proposals. Having said that, my view is that what's proposed here today and what's before us is worthwhile. As far as I'm concerned, it takes us as far as we can legally go at the moment, Leader, and I stress insofar as we can legally go. Some of us would take the view that we would like to go a bit further, and I would like to think, as I say, that such things as for instance, as Councillor Maitland has already alluded to, should in fact form the basis of future representation, as it were, to the Scottish Government. In the meantime, going back to specifics, can I have clarification, Leader? The issue, as it were, of Lorburn, the issue that's been raised by Lorburn Community Council, and I would commend them for it, in fact, would appear to require to be resolved as part of the wider process, which will mean, in fact, that we cannot approve the scheme today and deal with that particular issue separately. So we will have to, as I understand it, Leader, we will have to hang everything together and wait until this is resolved before we can approve the scheme today. There seems to be some doubt in that, sir, so I would welcome clarification. Thank you.
Leader, thanks Councillor Geddes. I think the issue here is that the vast bulk of the consultation has been undertaken. The issue raised by Lorburn Community Council came in, as Councillor Smith said, in November. At that point, members took the view that they thought it would be appropriate to look at that. What we will hope members will do today, and we're asking members to do today, is to approve everything that's before you and to receive a report on the Lorburn issue at your June meeting. That will enable you to implement the scheme in its entirety in June. So it means that those community councils which were rushing to implement the scheme next week won't be able to do that. We cannot enforce a scheme until we have the entire thing approved. We're advised, and this is on legal advice that we've received, that it's better to implement the scheme in its entirety than endeavour to implement it in part, or incrementally. That's the word I was looking for, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Leader. I'm grateful.
Craig.
Thank you, Leader. I don't have a problem with this. I have no issues with the recommendations at all. It was just really to say that this has been a long, drawn-out affair because of the consultations needed on this, and to say really that for the community councils in our area, I feel they have been well consulted. They have raised concerns over many issues, but these have been addressed by officers, and I welcome that, and I thank them for that. And I think it's really an opportunity in this particular case, because this council is often challenged on its consultation process, but I think this one has worked particularly well, and it has taken notice of a lot of feedback from community councils throughout the region, so I welcome this report.
Thank you. Can we agree the recommendations to 1, to 2, to 3, to 4, to 5, to 6, to 7? Alistair?
Thank you, Leader. You didn't catch my eye. I'll need to sit more in the middle next time. On the back of what Councillor Smith said about the fact that in our ward there are areas which are disestablished, so to speak, and have no community council representation, I would like to get comfort from an assurance that in terms of recommendation 2.1, we give significant weight to any quasi-established groups in areas which don't have community councils, particularly when you look at page 65, other stakeholders. And these are, in many cases, the only semi-formal group in a particular area, and I would like to consider that their views are taken seriously.
Yeah, that's confirmed as part of the council decision. Okay. Can we agree the recommendations? Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Leader. I mean, the one I was going to ask was under 3.2 was the membership formula. And I know we've been through this, but I see the absolute silliness of a community council with 122 people having 13 members and one just away from it with 5,000 members having 12, and I really think it's something that's got to be revisited, because I don't know, maybe the public voted in their own areas, but I think across the region we have a total disparity of community council numbers. Some have got 7 with 3,000, some have got 13 with 200 or 300. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Can I just say that it's all been discussed, it's all been decided, and some community councils actually wanted less numbers than what they had it before.
But was it ever discussed with the public or just the community councils? Because that's voting for.
I mean, it's, everything was out there. I'm not taking any more on this. We've agreed the recommendations, and we're moving on to item 9. If we can move on to item 9, this is very much a process report regarding the scheme of delegation to officers in relation to notifications for public processions. If members want to have an argument up the back there, please go outside and do it. Yes, I can see you now, Councillor Maitland, but anyway, okay. This is very much a process.
Excuse me, Leader.
Yep.
What were you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that you're talking over me and having a discussion over me. So I'm chairing this meeting, and if you want any argument, if you want any discussions, please go outside and do it. Thank you.
Leader, I understand exactly what you're saying, but it does take 2 to tango.
Yeah. And you caught my eye that time, Councillor Maitland. For once, you did catch my eye. So. This is very much a process report regarding the scheme of delegation to officers in relation to notifications for public processions. The licensing panel will still have an overseeing role and will still consider notifications in respect to sectarian marches where objections have been received or where a prohibition order is recommended. Alex will answer any questions. Open to members. Read the recommendations.
Just want to, thanks, Chair. I just want to clarify, in the recommendations it refers to the Chief Constable several times. Is that the fact, or is that just a misprint? Or?
It will still be the Chief Constable will consult, sir. He may delegate it to an officer, but the requirement in legislation, and this is when you alter one piece of legislation, you need to do the knock-on. It will be the Chief Constable of Police Scotland we will consult. He will probably delegate it to a local officer to deal with, but that's what the legal requirement is, sir.
Jim?
Just a couple of questions. Why are we looking at changing it in the first place? And why DG first? And I dare say my director will not be happy with me. Why not EIC? Because it's EIC that commissioned DG first just deliver.
The street closure orders are directly dealt with by DG first. The PHE have no involvement in that. It's very much done at a local level. It seems logical that when the consultation is ongoing, it should be undertaken at a local level, sir. And that's the logic behind it. Nothing more than to make sure that it's done at a local level and make sure that the people involved actually understand the area. A lot of these things relate to ridings of the marches and street closures. 9 times out of 10, there's a requirement for a public procession application. And really all they're doing is saying, we'd like to shut the road for half an hour to let the horses through. But it's still classed as a public procession.
Andrew?
Just a small point, and that is, I take it there will have been a risk assessment done, there's not one in the report.
That's the purpose of the application for the public procession. Each application is accompanied by a risk assessment. The applicant is required to provide a risk assessment, which we then monitor and agree with the police. That's on the one occasion when we may come back to members and ask members to impose conditions or a prohibition order where we felt the risk assessment had not been properly undertaken.
Okay, can we agree the recommendations? Moving on to item 10. This is a long outstanding matter relative to membership of the Nistdale and Wigton Divisional Licensing Boards. I think we now have 2 willing volunteers. Could we just have confirmation of that and agree the appointments, please? That's Alistair and Andy. Okay?
Delighted. Yeah.
You saw it. Right, moving on to item 11, which is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Local Plan, and this is a report by the Direct Chief Executive Service. The local plan has been discussed by Police and Fire Subcommittee, which agreed that full council consider the matter. I'm aware that members are deeply unhappy at the recent decisions by Fire Scotland to close the local fire control room in Dumfries, a decision that was made without any advance warning and without opportunity being allowed for dialogue about other options and the wider implications this decision had in relation to jobs within Dumfries and Galloway. At COSLA, I raised the issue of the lack of any meaningful dialogue between the newly established Police Scotland and local authorities, and in many ways at national level this is the case with Fire Scotland. An event has been arranged for all police and fire conveners to meet with the Fire Board and senior management team on 2nd April to discuss these concerns. I know that members have a number of questions to ask about the plan, so I think it's Hamish McGee, Area Manager, and Alan Fairburn, Local Senior Officer, South Lanarkshire, are in attendance. I will now open it up to members. Archie?
Well, thanks very much. Firstly, can I say that I have the utmost respect for all the fire service and police service in Dumfries and Galloway. I think they do a wonderful job at this particular thing. We'll look at the plan. In page 132, which is the reduction of accident dwelling fires, it suggests that there are some wards that have more prominent dwelling fires. I wonder if I can ask a couple of things on that particular thing. Can I ask which are the wards they are, because the wards are actually not in the plan itself? How do you propose to deal with those particular wards? Will there be an enhanced provision in those particular wards, and will you be setting specific targets where there is a bigger problem within those wards in Dumfries and Galloway?
Thank you. Do you want to answer?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Mr. Driver, if you don't mind, before I answer the question, can I just first of all introduce the individual on my right-hand side, who is Alan Fairbairn. For your information, he will be the interim local senior officer for Dumfries and Galloway for the next couple of months until a full process is delivered nationally to find the right and most appropriate person to come down and represent Dumfries and Galloway. I, over that period of time, because of my historical involvement with this local authority, will be supporting Alan in taking the local plan and any other issues that come out of that forward. In terms of your questions in terms of accidental dwelling fires, Councillor Driver, the areas that we have identified within Dumfries and Galloway are Dumfries, North West Dumfries and Locker Briggs, Stranraer, Annan and Lockerbie. They are the wards in which we've identified that we have a higher than what we would wish to have. In terms of the resources that we would put into that, we aren't specifically going to bring to move resources around, but what we will do is move them in terms of the redistribution of work within Dumfries and Galloway. Where we find that the resources that we have within Dumfries and Galloway are not sufficient to meet those targets, then we will draw on national resources to bring them down into Dumfries and Galloway. I personally don't see a need for that at the moment. We have more than sufficient resources within the area, and it will just be as we've done in business as usual before. we look at where the greatest need is and we target the workload to that area. In terms of targets, yes, that is what a local plan is all about, and what we will have that will support the 3-year local plan is a local annual operating plan, which will allow us to be flexible in those needs over the 3-year period. I hope that answers the question.
Right.
Thanks, Chair. It follows on from Archie, Hamish. On the next page, 133, it's to do with targets. I mean, in there it's suggesting that the national targets of 5% would be set for a reduction of fire casualties and fire fatalities. However, we don't know how that's broken down to region and by area, district. As a local plan, maybe we should see that further detail before we sign up to a local plan. To set a national target of 5%, what is our commitment to that 5%?
It's a very well made point, and one that we've had an awful lot of dialogue within the service ourselves. What we are putting forward or proposing to you here is a 3-year plan, and as I'm sure you will understand that to put targets that you set on an annual basis in a 3-year plan doesn't allow you much flexibility to move and react to what actually happens within that year. So what the intention is to provide targets on an annual basis through an annual operating plan, which will be submitted to the subcommittee for your approval. We also don't want to set a blanket target locally, as if we go back to the previous question, is that one area within Dumfries and Galloway we may wish to try and target a greater level of reduction than others because of what we're starting to see and emerge within the area. So you will get to see them, but they will come in an annual operating plan. We don't want to put them into a 3-year plan where then we can't be flexible and go back and change them.
Can I just ask, when is the annual operating plan actually coming? And this is end of March.
The annual operating plan for the forthcoming year is complete. It's in draft, and it will be coming to the subcommittee within the next couple of months.
Helpful to actually, lots of questions about specifics. So, for example, which wards are affected by the first question. The second question is what actually is our annual target. Lots of specifics there that we haven't seen the operating plan to show us how that will be implemented. So, is it not sensible to have that at the same time as the annual, as the proposals we've actually got in front of us today, so we can actually see the detail as to how this will be implemented?
I think you've got to look at in terms of what the local plan is trying to achieve. The local plan is trying to be the jam in the sandwich, if you like, between the strategic plan which is being delivered at a national level and the local plans, the operating plans at the bottom. And what it's trying to do is give you a direction of travel. It's trying to provide you with what we believe are the strategic objectives within Dumfries and Galloway, and where we should be pinpointing our resources to have best effect. I think that's, at this level, that's what we're looking to try and achieve from you, is to get you to agree that those are the priorities and objectives that the service has at this current time within Dumfries and Galloway. The detail of how it's then delivered will then come within the annual operating plan, and clearly that will have to come through the subcommittee at a more operational level to ensure that it's going in the right direction.
Sean?
Thanks, Leader. I think if you look within the plan, I think the SFRS, continue to be a key partner with regards to the local single outcome agreement. If you look on page 127, obviously priority 4, which is we will support and stimulate our local economy. I'm sure you will understand that you provide high quality jobs to the region, and have a fundamental role to play within the developing the local economy. I'm just wondering, how will you continue to make that kind of impact in the local community and continue to contribute in these areas to improve the economy?
In answer to your question, I would suggest to you that, and certainly from my understanding, is that within Dumfries and Galloway, there has been no decrease in the number of resources that we have at service delivery. So in terms of employment and the number of posts in all these communities, they have remained exactly as they were before. What has happened is that a number of the kind of more senior and middle management have been redeployed throughout the west of Scotland, but are still located within Dumfries and Galloway. There are obviously some national decisions that have been taken that require to be made in order to meet budget constraints, but those are obviously well documented, and as the leader indicated earlier, there are discussions that will happen at COSLA on the 2nd of April, which I apologise, but I'm not party to that level of detail at this current time.
Just on it, obviously there's a lot of public concern over the staffing and meeting the needs of the service, and the current stations and staffing are not detailed within the local plan. What assurances could you provide that will ensure that there are adequate resources, at least at the current level, to deliver this local plan?
I can absolutely assure you that anything that's in the local plan, the objectives that are in there will be met. And the reason I can say that quite comfortably is that we're no longer just constrained by the geography of Dumfries and Galloway. The resources that are available to us are not just from a West Service Delivery Area perspective, which takes in the antecedent Strathclyde and D&G, but also on a national basis, so that on any given day I can actually ask for resources from anywhere in Scotland to come and assist in Dumfries. And we have already done that on a number of occasions. We've also been able to change the references of a number of officers within Dumfries and Galloway, whereby fire safety enforcement and community safety might have been part of their jobs in the past, but because we're in a much larger organisation, some of those other tasks that they've been given in the past have been taken away from them. They are now purely focused on the delivery and their job as a whole. So I don't see there being any problem with delivering any of the targets that are and the objectives that are within here. But again, as it was alluded earlier, I would also re-emphasise it's about partnership working, and it's not just about fire and rescue service. And we are absolutely committed to work with the partners within Dumfries and Galloway to make the difference in all of these areas.
Yes, I take it that's if these resources are available at the time it's needed. Jeff?
Yeah, reference was made to the closure of the control room and redeployment of staff from there. Obviously, we're a relatively remote region, so some of the redeployment opportunities are unrealistic without staff actually moving out of Dumfries and Galloway. So what efforts are we making to tackle the redeployment of staff who don't want to take early retirement or voluntary severance in terms of retaining them within the region? And the converse is, in terms of the centralisation of services, what efforts are we making to make sure that we do get some of these centralised services actually placed in Dumfries and Galloway in terms of employing job redeployment opportunities?
In response to your first question about the redeployment, or should we say the opportunities for fire control who may be may be displaced because of the closure of the fire control room, is that we are very well sighted on that. And one of the examples I would give you is that in the future, Dumfries and Galloway will have a dedicated community action team. These are where people are completely focused on community safety activities and engagement within a community planning arena and going out to schools and just the whole safety arena. That has been put on hold at the moment in forming that team on the basis that we see that one of the opportunities will be that people from fire control will redeploy into that team. So that's one area. The other area, or the other options that will be available, will be about retraining, which we will facilitate to allow them to take on other tasks that the local senior officer may require within Dumfries and Galloway. There is also voluntary redundancy and early retirement packages which will be offered up when the decision to take is taken about the fire control closing, because at this moment in time I have no timescales for that to happen. And finally, it's about individuals themselves. They are able to apply for jobs within Scottish Fire and Rescue Service right now, and all that is open to them as we move forward. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the second part of your question.
the converse of bringing some of these centralised services down to Dumfries and Galloway.
My apologies. I can also tell you that there are a number of staff within Dumfries and Galloway right now that are taking on national jobs. And in actual fact, we have 2 members of staff who actually now head up performance for Scotland. So it's not like, we haven't got national jobs in Dumfries and Galloway. They are there and they are to be located there. There is no intention to move them. And I'm sure that will happen with others. There are also other people at the moment who are formerly Dumfries and Galloway but now work within a West service delivery area context, including myself, at no detriment to myself.
Okay, we've got Ted first.
Thank you, Chair. On page 136, where we talk about the reduction in casualties from non-fire emergencies, the plan highlights that the Stay Drive, Stay Alive programme is having an effect on the incidents involving young drivers. But it also indicates that there's been an increase in the number of fatal accidents involving elderly drivers. Can we have an assurance that the Young Driver programme will not be replaced in favour of a programme targeted specifically at elderly drivers, and any plan targeted at elder drivers will be resourced from additional funds?
Can I first start off by answering that question that's saying that road safety is not actually a fire and rescue service objective. We participate in it, and we believe quite rightly that we should work with partners to reduce and educate where possible. The Safe Drive, Stay Alive programme is actually, the ownership of that is a road safety partnership of Dumfries and Galloway. It's not the Fire and Rescue Service. What I can do is give you a commitment that the Fire and Rescue Service will continue to participate in that educational campaign and any other ones that that road safety partnership identifies required to take us forward.
Jim.
Hey, thanks, Chair. If you look at the foreword on page 124, the fourth paragraph near the bottom, it says, through ongoing involvement with local community safety groups in Dumfries and Galloway, we will continue to develop our understanding of local needs and proactively seek out consultation opportunities with all sections of the community. I think with the exception of Thornhill Community Council, once I've never seen a fire service representative at any of these community councils, and I think that's a useful exercise that should be conducted. And it's all very well putting these glowing terms in a document, but if you don't actually follow it through, it doesn't serve the purpose for which it's intended. So I look forward to seeing the Scottish Fire Service or Scottish Fire and Rescue Service consulting very much with the local communities to ensure that their needs are dealt with. And I think the other thing, as someone who joined the fire service at the time we were moving from the South Western Fire Brigade to the Dumfries and Galloway Fire Brigade, we found ourselves being the subject of receiving used or second-hand equipment, and new equipment was retained in the central locations. And I know that wasn't the philosophy that was ever applied in the Dumfries and Galloway Council or the Dumfries and Galloway Fire Brigade. And I hope that's not a philosophy that we'll see develop in the future. I hope that the same standard of equipment, and that's what suggested in this document, and the same level of service will be delivered right across the whole of the Scottish Fire Service. And that's an assurance that I'd be looking for. And as fixed assets as well, I wouldn't like to see an amalgamation of two fire stations into one, because I know we don't have the 20-minute requirement now to hit a settlement above a certain number of people, but there's still a requirement to provide a service and a quality service to all communities in Dumfries and Galloway, irrespective of their size. So whilst it's not in your document, I'd hope there'd be an absolute assurance that there was never an intention to reduce the number of assets, the number of staff who serve in these assets, nor the standard of equipment that we expect to see in a national fire service serving local communities in Dumfries and Galloway.
Where to start with that one, Councillor Dempster? In terms of your engagement with the local community councils, yeah, we'll take that, back, and we will look at that and see how best we can do it. The intention is that even though we will have an annual operating plan underneath, where we're looking at how we best serve, either through district plans or ward plans. We know you have the area committees right now and we report back through them, but we're looking to see how better we can engage at that level. So that is work in progress and we will take that on board. In terms of the resources and the assets as moving from a single service into the national service, I can assure you at this moment in time that we are actually benefiting from moving in, and that is not a criticism of the council prior to moving into a Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, because we were very well looked after within Dumfries and Galloway and very well financed. And when the cuts came along, I know that you looked on us very favourably. So it's in our interest to maintain that infrastructure moving forward. I can tell you that this year that 4 brand new fire appliances built to the highest specification on Scania chassis will be delivered in the next month into Dumfries and Galloway. They are going to, and I might get this wrong, I think it's Stranraer, Dumfries, Lockerbie and Annan. So the absolute commitment of the Scottish Service to maintain the level of infrastructure is absolute. I'm also aware of a number of changes and improvements to ICT infrastructure and also to replacement of appliance bay doors and electrical lighting and things. So the ongoing maintenance that we started very successfully within Dumfries and Galloway has been not taken on board, and at this moment in time it is absolutely clear that we are going in the right direction.
Chair, with your indulgence, just a throwaway line. I hope that the 4 appliances that are being replaced are the 4 oldest ones, because that's exactly the point I was trying to make, that very often new appliances would arrive, they'd go into the central location, and we would then get a unit or a tender or an appliance that had served a number of years elsewhere. That was certainly a practice that took place before, and I hope that's not the case now.
It's not the case at this moment in time, but as you would expect from any service or any business, you look to best use the assets that you have. And in Dumfries and Galloway, our activity levels, as opposed to the centre of Glasgow, are completely different. And therefore, with a good asset management practice, there may well be some in the future movement of appliances for best use. But absolutely the priority is to provide the best equipment for people within Dumfries and Scotland as a whole.
Thank you.
So you got your answer at this moment in time. At this moment in time.
Please tell me what happened later on, Chair. Leader, that's all.
Thanks, Leader. More of a general question. Just considering this plan is over the next 3 years, Scottish Government promote localism, but they've actually got a centralisation agenda. So if over the next 2 to 3 years, which is a chance it could happen, you get a 20% reduction in budget, how does the local plan cope with that?
The objectives within the local plan won't change, because clearly they are based upon an impact assessment within the Dumfries and Galloway and what your priorities are here. What then is down to the chief and the board to then look at how they redeploy the resources to meet the objectives of that plan. So therefore it would be at a national level that they would have to look at that. In terms of how it would impact us locally, that's where the annual plan locally would then show the subcommittee where we would be directing our resources. But the actual local plan itself and the priorities within it do not change. Budgets will change and the delivery of it mechanism will change, but the actual priorities that are within the local plan should not change.
Stephen first, then Andy.
Thank you, Leader. It was just a quick question on, I suppose, our new LSO. And I appreciate that during the reform process there was, timescales were squeezed a little bit to meet the 1st of April deadline, etc. But I presume there'll be some form of consultation on the new LSO that comes to the local subcommittee.
Absolutely, that is written down in legislation that has to happen, so it will happen. In terms of the timescales, as recently as yesterday, I was made aware that the process to identify these people will start late April, and the process will complete around the beginning of June. So you should have a name coming to you for consultation around the beginning of June. But in the meantime, you've got myself and Alan to ably look after you, hopefully.
Andy.
Thanks, Leader. Hamish. I was actually in this daily committee. I'm referring to page 128, you know, the local operational assessments, and the bit I'm coming in here is that in the KPIs that are here, we were actually assured at the area committee that a KPI, for example, on response times would be embedded in the plan. A lot of what you've got here is proactive stuff and preventative stuff, but what we actually would like to know is that when you do get a call, how long it takes you to get there, and you know, and what kind of response was that's the kind of information that local members would actually see a huge benefit in getting, because again, and the local public would be assured that it was actually happening. So, I mean, how can we get that changed?
Don't disagree with your observation, Councillor Ferguson. The problem we have on that occasion is that in terms of setting that sort of KPIs, they have to be done at a national level, and therefore it's not just about, you know, within Dumfries and Galloway. There are discussions going on right now between the Fire Brigades Union and the board and the strategic leadership team around that, and when those are agreed, then that's the sort of time that we will be able to implement it in the plan. We were not there at this moment in time, and I can't give you a timescale on when that will actually be available.
So can I come back in, Leader? So basically what you're saying, Hamish, is that that's a work in progress at a national level, which will filter down to the local down here, because obviously the response time here will vary greatly from Centre Street in Glasgow to around the corner. Absolutely.
Correct. We've got to appreciate we now have island communities, and you know, you've got the centre of Glasgow, which will be completely different to being on the you know, the Isle of Bute or something like that. So it's about having a pragmatic look at it all and coming up with a national set of standards, if you like, and that is very much a discussion that's ongoing as we speak.
That was interesting. But Colin?
Follow up on Andy's point, actually. So what are we being told, that actually we can't have any local targets or any local outcomes in a local plan? We can only have national outcomes in a local plan. We can't say we're developing a local plan which is there to meet the needs of our local area. We have to only include a target if it's set at national level. We can't have a local target, because I think one of the discussion that was at the area committee that Andy refers to was a view that we should have specifically, we accept that the national targets and plans are set nationally, but we should actually have local targets and local plans that we want to see. But what you're saying is that we can't include, for example, a target for response times, because that's not a national target at the moment.
No, that's not the case. What I'm saying is we don't have a national target to which we can align the local targets. It's not a case of that you can't have them, but you have to have, we have to have a basis on which to set the local targets. If we go and unilaterally set them in Dumfries and Galloway, then, you know, without a national agreement, then we could then cause issues for other areas. And we are just being, at this moment in time, being very sensitive to the national picture, which is what we have to do. We will then come back, and then through negotiation or consultation with yourselves, then we come to what we need at a local level. It's not about that you can't set locally, but there are certain areas in which we need to get a national perspective before we can actually set them locally.
But that is saying what I'm saying. We can't set a target locally unless there's a national target. That's what you're saying. Can we or can we not set a local target for something?
You can, yes,
yeah,
but not
yeah.
at this moment in time in terms of response times. That's a national discussion that is being taken place, but there are other areas where we can set local targets without having the national one. In fact, we would encourage you to do so, but most of those you already do through your single outcome agreement. And that's where, you know, if we look at it from a partnership perspective, the fire service is one partner within it, and we would wish the targets to be something that we would contribute to, rather than, you know, specifically coming out and going, fire's going to do this, because with all respect, a number of the targets that are even within there, without the help of partners, you know, fire won't be able to do it on its own. So it's, you know, and one of the ways in which, or one of the focuses for us, is about how we contribute to your targets, which is the single outcome agreement.
Which targets in this document have been set locally then?
Well, your single outcome agreement targets, it states in there that we will deploy resources to support partners to meet the objectives within the single outcome agreement. It quite clearly states it in there on page 4 of the actual plan. It shows you how it goes from a strategic assessment, the national assessment, down through equality and into the local single outcome agreement. We're very cognizant that it's local targets set by you within that single outcome agreement that we need to address.
And it's very, very general as well, I have to say. It talks about priorities 1 to 6. I mean, one of the priorities of this council, for example, is actually to campaign for example, a significant number of the civilian posts within the Fire and Police Service to be retained within Dumfries and Galloway. So that's contained within priority 5 of the list of priorities this council has. But what we're also saying is that the closure of the control room and changes that are being made is likely to reduce the number of civilian posts that are located within Dumfries and Galloway. So how does this plan align with the priority of this council, which is to retain those posts within Dumfries and Galloway? Because that is contained within priority 5.
Everything you've said there is accurate, and I can't argue with it, other than the only defence I can give you at this moment in time is that the local plan is aligned to the local senior officer, and the fire control is not a local senior officer asset. It is not actually under the control of the local senior officer. The fire control is part of a national response and resilience infrastructure, and therefore the determination of what happens with that has been done at a national level and through the board, and it's through the board's agreement that the fire control is closed. So the way in which the consultation required at that time was on the closure of the fire control room. It's got nothing to do with the local plan.
George.
Thanks, Chair. Just a very quick question, actually, about the future of the Scottish Fire Service. Traditionally in Dumfries and Galloway, during the summer months, the fire service have attended like agricultural shows and gala days as a PR exercise. And you could go to Wigton Shores and Rasho or the Stewartshire Dumfries and all these gala events. You see kids clambering over the top of fire engines. Once you get the new fire engines, will they still be allowed to do that? And will you actually still come and attend these agriculture and other gala events as a PR exercise? Because I think it is an important part of the service you provide.
Just to clarify, they're not for PR exercises. They're actually very fundamental community safety activities, and as such we will not be changing. In fact, if anything, because of the community action team that we will be generating and creating in the future, we will be going to more and trying to sell more of a message of safety, community safety as a general.
Chair, I accept, they're maybe not PR exercises, but the general public, thoroughly enjoy them. So, they maybe regard it as that, but I accept what you're saying. I'm pleased to hear you're actually going to continue.
Yep, nice to see you back, Hamish. At the last Police Fire Rescue Committee, or whatever they call themselves now, Pat Waters was present. One question for you: how long is Pat Waters in his position, or how long is it to go? Because at that committee, he quite publicly stated there will be no diminution of assets in the region. And I'm referring to Drumore Fire Station, as you well know. Now, that's good as long as Pat's there. How long is he there?
I don't know exactly the detail of the contract that Mr. Waters is currently on, but I believe it's around 3 to 4 years.
Maybe the next person will be better.
Okay, members, I detect that members are concerned about over the insufficient detail in the report to satisfy us that the plan meets our priorities, especially in relation to the resources, support staff and local targets. Are members of the view that further discussions is needed with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service before we agree the plan, with a view to having a further report perhaps at the next scheduled meeting of full council? Would that satisfy everybody? Ronnie?
Just to support what you've said there, this is no criticism of the work that's done locally. We just want to send a clear message to the National Service about we're unhappy about the lack of consultation with the likes of the closure of the control room and that. And there is meetings in April, as is suggested in the paper, and I know there's further meetings in May with the relevant head officers for both fire and police. So I'm quite happy for us to defer agreeing this plan, because something might happen with your meetings in April and May that we might have to change the local plan. We don't know what's going to happen when you have your discussions nationally. So I'm quite happy with your suggestion, Leader, because we may have to change the plan. We might not, but we might have to. So for them reasons, I'm quite happy to support you.
Thank you. Ian?
Thanks for that. I mean, I totally support it if we can defer this. But I wonder what the implications were of that in regards to, I feel very strongly aligned in regards to priority 4. I think Colin touched on it earlier, he spoke about priority 5 as well, but we've just agreed a council policy about building the local economy. The whole budget's based on that. This is in regards to stimulating the local economy. If things are centralised in agenda, if it continues over the next 2 to 3 years, then it would have a major impact. So therefore I would be happy to defer this and see it coming back with further information.
Okay, Andy.
Sorry, just can I ask some guidance for Mr Haswell here? If we defer this report, do we have to get this report back, or do we need to add in here an updated report?
We will endeavour to update the report. Certainly the report that I've produced will be updated. It will be a matter for the discussions that you have, that leaders, etc., have with the National Fire and Rescue Service as to whether or not the actual plan itself will require updating. But I'll certainly update my report and bring members up to speed with anything that's arisen since, as a result of these meetings that are taking place in April and May, and any other discussions that take place.
Can I come back in, Leader? Yeah, the problem was actually another committee we'd had when we deferred the report, where there was new information, if you remember, and we had to actually take the original report and then come forward with separate things. That's the point I'm asking. So, do we actually need to add a sentence in there to say to bring and to amend with an amended plan if that's the outcome of the negotiations with the Scottish Fire and Rescue?
There'll be a new report which will set out developments since this report, and if the plan itself is amended, then an amended plan will come forward to you. And the report will detail where the amendments in the plan are.
Okay, Ivor.
Chair, not want to go against the sort of direction, but just for governance assurance, is there any implications of deferring this report which might apply to the service going forward? I wouldn't like to think that we are deferring this and we're being imposed national plans over the couple of months that might cause any issues.
Members, if I can refer either to paragraph 3.4.2. My understanding is that this is a negotiated and an agreed plan. If there are more than one party agreeing the plan, we need agreement across the piece. So that's the view that has been taken in relation to it. So what you're basically doing is you're deferring consideration of the plan, appreciating that there will be further dialogue with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service regarding the issues which have been raised today, and indeed any other issues. That will be reported back to this council with under an amended report, and any amendments to the plan will be highlighted if they take place.
So that's just, we're working along as if it had been agreed, but we're still negotiating it. Or are we still acting under the old local plan? Because currently we don't have a local plan for the next 2 months. Or whenever the next...
Gavin?
Can we not kid ourselves? The police, the operational management of fire service is a national operation. The fire service will continue whether or not we agree or disagree with this local plan. The priorities set out there are national priorities, and they will deliver on it. The issue I think that we need to reflect in the next paper is about the conflict resolution position that we seem to be entering into. But the fire service operationally is governed by the Chief Fire Officer, and will continue to protect the public. I think the issue that Ivor is raising is, in fact, if we disagree, what would happen if we disagree with this plan? And I think that's the weakness in the process that we've arrived at today, in the national process. So I think what Alec and I would need to do is offline work on what is the conflict resolution if we get to a position in 2 months unable to agree that. But I think the assurance we should be looking for that actually this will not affect the response of our excellent fire personnel to deal with the risks in our area. But this is an issue I think that we do need to get some national guidance, and perhaps could have been clarified by the chair if he had a slightly different approach to the meeting with fire and rescue, the last one, is what happens if we don't agree the plan. And that's, I think, is the fundamental issue for us here.
Okay, can we defer the report for further consideration to the next scheduled meeting of the full council, and where we'll have further information, further dialogue before that, and other details, and see what the new local plan would look like after these discussions. Thank you. If we can move on to item 12, the Police Scotland local plan. This is a report by the Director Chief Executive. Again, the local plan has been discussed by the Police and Fire Subcommittee, which agreed that full council should consider the matter. Again, I am also aware that members are deeply unhappy at the recent decision by Police Scotland to close the local police control room. I won't rehearse the reasons for members' anger at both the decision, but also the appalling manner in which the decision was made, as we discussed the matter in a great deal of depth at our last meeting. Members will recall it was agreed at the beginning of February that I would write to Vic Ellery, the Chair of the Scottish Police Authority, to request a meeting. I can report to members that Mr Ellery hasn't yet given this council the courtesy of a reply. Likewise, I wrote to Sir Stephen House requesting a meeting, and I understand this meeting is being set up for early May after the closure of the control room. I know that members will have a number of questions to ask about the plan, and Kate Thompson, the local commander, is in attendance. I will now open the meeting to members. Archie.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I'll say that prevention is better than curing as long as we have a plan in place. That's great, but we need to make sure that plan's right. I think police officers in this area do a great job locally, in and out of work as well. I do a lot of work with police officers, for instance, at Annan Athletic, when we deal with football and things like that, and they do a brilliant job. But coming to the actual the plan itself, on page 160. There is, in the fourth paragraph down, it states we have established a domestic abuse investigation unit to proactively identify high risk and repeat offenders, targeting their offender behaviour and bringing them to justice while providing support to victims. I'm just wondering, Kate, if you can advise me whether that's a Dumfries and Galloway division unit or is it a Police Scotland unit division?
Thanks, Councillor. It's actually, there's two parts to it. There is a local domestic abuse investigation unit, which is based here, which are Dumfries and Galloway division officers, but they are supported by a national team, the Domestic Abuse Task Force, which by its very nature adds a bit of resource to it. What we've used them for in recent times is the very complex cases, or those where the individuals have moved across boundaries to other areas. So we've worked in partnership with them on some occasions, but on many of the local occasions, they're actually Dumfries and Galloway division officers that are carrying out those investigations and reporting them to the local fiscal. All of the cases are reported to the local procurator fiscal here, unless, as you can imagine, the complexity of a cross-boundary one, and we have a few at the moment which have gone into Ayrshire, Lanarkshire and Glasgow and Dumfries and Galloway. We have dialogue with the local fiscal to see who the best person is to report that to, but there are two tiers of it, but we work together.
Obviously there's the issue with Cumbria as well. because there's a few, you know, Carlisle, Gretna type families we've fought. Even Ronnie here's married to a Carlisle lassie and beats him up regularly as well. So the issue there between Cumbria and the Dumfries and Galloway division is still strong.
Yeah, we still have liaison meetings with colleagues across the boundary. Obviously, we've got the added complication of different legislation, different reporting, which sometimes can add to the complexity of a case, but there's still a lot of close liaison with colleagues in Cumbria and actually Northumbria as well, because it's not long before you hit their boundary as well with some of the individuals that we're dealing with. So, no, there's still a lot of close working. It's just they've got a dedicated unit. We always probably did, but they're much more proactive, investigative than probably they previously were, which is tackling it from the offender perspective to try and deal with them at an early stage to take them away from the people that are most at risk.
Okay, Graham.
Thanks, Leader. Just a couple of comments. So obviously, we've got a draft comprehensive report of us in front of us, a Dumfries and Galloway local plan for policing. Members, I just hope this plan will stack up over time. As you know, this region has suffered badly under SNP cuts, and hopefully we suffer no more cuts in Dumfries and Galloway for Police Scotland and or other centralisation policies. But one question I'd like to ask Superintendent Kate Thompson, on behalf of our strong unionist group, well, we're the Magnificent Seven, but members, we're now six of the best. Six of the best, right wing unionists. No, we're still strong. I'd like to ask a question to Superintendent Kate Thompson regards can we use as much local knowledge to combat crime across the region and expertise of local staffing? Can you guarantee this?
Yes.
Well, that's good to hear. We're keeping it local.
David.
Cheers, Leader. Under road safety, the report details 23% of respondents identified road safety as a problem. Were the public given a list of choices? And also further in the report, the objective says to increase the number of people reported. Surely the objective should be to reduce the number of people offending.
Councillor, we had exactly the same discussion about what we're trying to do, and I think it's actually the same end. You're actually trying to actively discourage that antisocial behaviour or dangerous driving that leads to road traffic collisions. Obviously, the priorities are that what's important to them, and I think it's probably an indication of the rurality of the region that for a lot of people, they see the collisions on the road, some of the issues that they're experiencing on the road because they're actually having to travel to get even to school, to work, to any of the kind of main towns in it. So I think in some respects, a lot of the respondents, rather than responding to any list we give them, it's about their own experience, and with a lot of them having to travel to their places of work or residence, that's actually what they've experienced themselves. I think as well the publicity this year, as you know, whilst they're killed and seriously injured on the roads, has seen a reduction. Tragically, the number of people killed on our roads has seen an increase from the previous year, and that's why I think that's foremost in people's minds as well when you're asking them some of these survey questions, because it has been very visible. There have been very tragic events.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Chair. It's just on page 164, the performance and accountability. I think it says there that we as a council will identify the key areas and monitor the progress where we may need to put in resources. I just want to know what would happen, what will happen if there's a conflict between national and local priorities, especially something like drug trafficking. Would that require the national resources or the local resources, and who would decide? And just the other thing, in the local plan, I can't see any targets or performance figures. So how can we agree something when we've no way of measuring it?
I'll try and remember both parts of that. I'll answer the first one first. In terms of, for instance, drug trafficking, That has always historically been dealt with the same way, which is you would use your local resources, but you would actually assess the level of threat and risk those individuals posed and the extent to which they are operating. Just now, we obviously have local resource, we have West Region resource, but actually we've got national resource. Whose responsibility is, I can tell you, it's the person sitting here answering the question that would be seeking to make sure that we've got sufficient resource to tackle what is an issue. If it is not an issue that meets the criteria set to be able to bring in national resources, you can be assured, Councillor, that it's my responsibility to make sure my resources are moved about, or I make bids for other resources that I can easily access to make sure we deliver on that local need. So if it helps, I haven't come in conflict so far because we actually have moved our own resources round about to be able to deal with what are very localised, but those that start to cross the boundaries of the local authority areas and stretch out, we've been able to secure that additional resource from those national teams, some of which I would have to say are located here, so we've been able to use them without cheating. In terms of the second question, targets and performance, they are actually delivered to the Scrutiny Board. So this is the overarching principle, but what we do is try and show year-on-year improvement, so there will always be a comparison. This year, what we've seen is very much a kind of, I would suggest, the benchmark for the figures and the new reporting processes that we have adopted. So next year, when I feed back to the local scrutiny board, which would be available to full council members as well, is I will do it under the priorities so that you can see that I'm actually looking at saying, I told you I would reduce or increase or whatever it is I'm doing. I'll give you the year-on-year figures and obviously then exception report to you in circumstances where I am, hopefully it won't happen, not meeting the standards that I've set myself.
Can I just come back in on that? So what we're actually saying is on the first part, if say national resources, they were not willing to put national resources in there, you will be able to overrule locally and get them resources.
I wouldn't necessarily be able to overrule, as in if somebody had a competing demand, but what it would allow me to do is then it's my responsibility to make sure that issue is met. So therefore, I would look at pooling resources and seeking assistance from elsewhere to make a team up to do it locally if I couldn't get the national resource. But as I say, we're very... We're probably more knowledgeable now on what some of those criteria are, and actually we've been making best use of that. And so far, Councillor, I haven't come into any conflict at all that hasn't said that we actually understand what the criteria is.
Jane?
I think all members feel distanced from this process in comparison to what we had before. We were the police authority. I now have looked at the subcommittee and realised that there is one member of the statutory committee on the subcommittee, where beforehand there was much more, I think, political direct influence on the whole process, and I definitely feel distanced from it. However, we've got to do what we've got to do, and I go back and to follow on from Councillor Martin's questions about local scrutiny engagement. The suggestion is here that that the police attend to local area committees and give us information, but that's only as good as the information that is provided, which has to be relevant to the area committees, down actually to ward level, for us to understand, really, I think, useful information in comparison with our community profiles. We want to know what's happening really locally. And actually, the departing inspector came to the statutory area committee and said rather apologetically, I can only break this down for you rather unofficially from the Galloway division level. And frankly, that's not actually, I don't think that does an adequate job in telling members what's happening in their area. So while I recognise what is being said here with respect to the plans, and that the plan has to take account of what is happening centrally, I think the actual law says the local commander must have regard, in preparing a local police plan, you have regard to the most recently approved strategic police plan, and then there's a list of consultees, and we come down at the bottom as such other persons as the local commander considers appropriate. And really what I'm saying is that I don't feel engaged on this process, actually, and until I have the information to engage locally, leader, I would feel definitely, I think that the public is too far away. So I'm hoping for relevant information on a ward basis.
Councillor, if I can just answer, and then I'll pass to Graham a bit about the scrutiny. At the Scrutiny Board, and I absolutely acknowledge your point about the members that are there, but probably I've consistently said that this is year one, and what we want to be able to do is provide that information and give the assurances I have to the committee previously that as soon as that information becomes available to me, I'll make sure that goes out into the multi-member ward, and that's a piece of work that you can be assured I am constantly requesting for the very reason that you've articulated. The other part is that, and it's a bit more of a challenge, if I'm being honest, is to understand for me, the governance of this is I probably am required, quite rightly, to report to the Scrutiny Board, the Police Scrutiny Board first. It would be really good if we could synchronise diaries of the area committees after that to then make sure you get the most current information, so that the Police Scrutiny Board are the first ones to hear some of the information. And as you can imagine, for me, I want to be able to be really upfront with some of the figures, particularly those where it's exception reporting, either very good or in the other case where it's not positive, and then to understand what that's like for the whole area so that I can then explain it. I've spoken to all the inspectors and chief inspectors who come to the area committees, and they've absolutely articulated the perspectives of the area committees to me, and it's probably, we're just in that position where I'm hoping this incoming year we're going to be able to deliver to you exactly what you want at your area committees, and it's not having to be extrapolated out of other figures, which I absolutely agree is difficult. In some respects, your inspectors and your chief inspectors have been more kind to you than perhaps I would have been, because I kind of said, you know, these are just going to be Dumfries and Galloway figures until we absolutely know, because as you can imagine, the last thing I want to do is to have sets of figures out there that we can't entirely be happy with, that they're accurate. So it's work in progress in terms of those figures, but be assured, Councillor, the message has got to us, and as soon as I get that update, it will be fed in through the area committees as well as the Scrutiny Board. Graham, I think, will cover just some of the scrutiny, because I think the point you raise is very relevant.
Certainly with regards to the consultation regarding the local policing plan, I mean, it is unfortunately the way the legislation is written. I'm certainly quite critical of the fact it's very internal looking, the way the legislation was written. But rest assured, we do take reports from community councils, from area committees, our community partners, schools, and indeed the full council and the PFRC extremely seriously. It's part of an ongoing two-way dialogue between the local police commander and her team and the local community, and very much the plan is built upon the face-to-face surveys that we did, which was over 1,000, the social media that we've used extensively. We had over 400 responses. We do carry out ongoing telephone surveys, at least 40 a month with service users, I suppose, and also look at other surveys that are available, not necessarily from the police, and the obvious example is the recent community safety survey that's just been carried out by the council to ensure that in some ways that we can sense check against our own policing assessment and the threat, risk and harm that is emerging through issues within Dumfries and Galloway, and very, very locally focused.
Rob?
Thanks, Leader. Yes, I hesitate to challenge what Councillor Maitland says. I actually agree with most of it, but it is perhaps a selective quote, in as much as the new inspector for the Stewartry attended just 2 area committees ago and brought with him reams and reams of statistics and information, much of, well, not much of which, but many examples of which we would never, in fact, have seen before. Memory is an imperfect age, so I can't remember if Councillor Maitland was present, but certainly it was a good first step, I think, that information. It strikes me that we are in a process of change and things will develop and improve as we go along. But that there are building blocks there already. Every ward has a policing plan. I remember being told by email about the policing plans, plural, which would cover Abbey Ward, given the operational breakdowns within it. For example, when the local community policeman attends Dalbeattie Community Council, just for example, he can produce statistics on what's happened over the previous month. So much of it already exists and simply requires to be bolted together. I certainly do think that ward-based statistics would be a valuable thing for the future. Very happy to pursue that in a stewardship context. I'm sure Councillor Stitt, Vice Chair, would support me in that. But I also get the impression that we are kind of pushing out an open door with this one, because actually much of it is there already. It's more a question perhaps of assembling it in the future for us to look at.
Councillor, it is exactly that, and please be assured I want to be able to do it. What I don't want to do is have people spending hours trying to extrapolate figures out when I actually want them to be doing other things. So at the point where it comes out, I'm sure you all love getting emails from me. You'll probably get one that says, you know, we are ready to go, and it'll go out to everybody, or it'll go to area committees, and it'll just say the issue with regards to that data. And what we'll do is we will try and present it in a way that builds around the plan. So where we've got priorities, you'll see what our aims were, and then there'll be statistics underneath it rather than just the bland statistics. It'll actually be then a lot more localised, a lot more focused, and you'll get a real sense of, well, how are we actually doing? So it's probably a bit of learning for us as well, just in how we present that so it's meaningful. And it's not just a bunch of statistics that you have to then unpick it and work it against the plan. We'll hopefully do that work for you.
Thanks, Marion.
Sorry, thank you, Leader. I see on page 158 that you're now in charge of just the local policing, and you've no longer managed reports of the drugs squad in Dumfries and Galloway. Are you able to give us any guarantees that these will be properly resourced under Police Scotland?
They are already, because we know that substance misuse generally down here has been challenging, and it hasn't dropped off at all. So in terms of the activity, some of the teams who have very key specialisms are obviously drawn into that national pool, but we can access them. But the other part is there are all the local community officers, and I think you particularly see it in the West. They are very, very active in terms of pulling that intelligence that comes from the community and then taking positive action in response to that. So be assured that whether they're uniformed or non-uniformed officers, they are actually very proactively tackling that issue, albeit the specialists, but actually all that's been taken away are those with very specialist skills that need to be used elsewhere where the greatest need is. But be assured we are making use of them as well. And we actually get other specialists coming from other places to come and help us too.
David McKay.
Sorry, Chair, I've been worrying about your right eye all day today. Under antisocial behaviour, you mentioned a community improvement partnership. Could you explain exactly what that is? And the community safety partnerships, apparently they've been attributed by Police Scotland to be not very effective. Can you let us know if they're going to be wound up or what the intention is with them?
Graham will answer the first bit second, but I'll answer the last bit. It's not Police Scotland's decision to wind up community safety partnerships. It's actually a partnership with the local authority. So we would be just one of the partners who actually link into that. So therefore, any discussion and dialogue would be done with colleagues in the other agencies who make up that community safety partnership, and we would have a view on it. So I'm not sure where that came from, Councillor, but certainly that isn't. All right, okay. I'll leave the rest to Graham.
In relation to the Community Improvement Partnership, it's relating to the 4 area meetings that the local council community safety team chair, in which on a monthly basis they bring together key partners within that locality to look at particular issues within, whether it be Wigtonshire or Nithsdale, and to target those individuals who are most causing disruption to the community within that area. That's what that refers to.
Okay, I've got Jarlack and it's either McClung or McComb. Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. In 3.1.2, it quite rightly says that you, as the local commander, are responsible for the delivery of the policing in Dumfries and Galloway and have direct control over the local resources. However, and I don't expect you to comment on this, unfortunately, at the end of the day, you will not control the number of officers that are within the local resources. And I would say the ability of yourself and your staff to deliver a local policing plan would be very much dependent on the numbers within those local resources over which you have the control. Regarding the policing plan, is there any intention of your Chief Constable actually going to publish a national policing plan? And by that I don't mean the Scottish Police Authority strategic policing plan, which doesn't actually tell us very much about what the police are going to do. It tells us more about what the Scottish Police Authority are going to do, which then they're actually two different things.
There is a national policing plan, an interim one published last year. The one for the next 3 years has certainly been created just now. In some ways it's a bit chicken and egg because it's fed up from the bottom from the multi-member ward plans, which will influence the local policing plan, and ultimately the 14 local policing plans, 32 local policing plans will influence the national policing plan. So it is being developed just now. This is very much local priorities that have been identified, and they'll be fed into the national pot, as it were, to create the national policing plan.
So technically we could be in a position where we agree a local policing plan and the Chief Constable decides on a national policing plan that would remove resources for Dumfries and Galloway.
If I can give you some assurance that, Councillor, that I have, obviously, you're not the first person to have raised that with me over the time. The priority for the Scottish Police Service is the delivery of local policing at a local level. And we've made it very clear this is the third biggest local authority in Scotland. The rurality of it makes it a challenge that actually you're at an optimum level for staffing. In terms of what's changed in a year, other than being slightly restructured into other areas of business, you still have access to these officers. And what my experience in the last year has been is I have not seen any reduction in the officers that are delivering local policing at a local level. And in fact, I have been able to and regularly called on additional resource from elsewhere. You're absolutely right. The Chief Constable reserves the right to move his resources where he wants. You're absolutely correct. But the reassurance would be that they understand the impact on the local area, and you can be assured that as your local police commander, that I wouldn't be overly happy if it was done. What power would I have? It's a uniformed service, but I would imagine that he would do that and have a full explanation as to why he was going to do that. I've got no indication that they're doing that just now. They have set the numbers, they recognise the importance of local policing, and that is the bedrock of the new Police Service of Scotland. If local policing doesn't work, then it doesn't matter how many specialists you have, it will not make up for that local policing, the community officers who know their business. And can I tell you, that's not missed on any of them. That's exactly what they understand by it. And we've had feedback from the Chief in the last week how well this division has done in terms of delivering with numbers of officers that are not any greater but not any less than it was in Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary, and we are still one of the top performing divisions, and I think that's credit to all the staff and officers who work for me and work with me to deliver at your end, and I think that is what will evidence to the Chief Constable that the actual balance of staffing is absolutely correct in Dumfries and Galloway.
Can I just take that a wee bit further? And I know we have no issue with the staff. We understand what's happening in policing in a local level, and we have nothing but huge respect for that. But we're trying to get here is what we don't understand, and what resources that aren't here, and how we in a local level can understand and maybe control some of that. If you look at Vic Henry's blurb at the page 153, it's saying, for example, we want residents to be able to see how money invested in policing is being used and what results it brings. But there's nothing actually here. There's no analysis of the spend or resources contained here. So it's not actually possible to scrutinise that. So, it goes against everything that we as a council, we as a community, we as a Dumfries and Galloway are looking for within that. And another part of the resources, and I understand what you're saying about the police, the officers and that, and again, we nothing but total respect for what's you have in Dumfries and Galloway and how you operate under these circumstances. But how are you in Police Scotland nationally dealing with the support staff, for example, whose jobs are currently at risk within the region? And what efforts are being made to actually locate central support services out with the central belt here, so you don't have to do everything yourself?
Obviously, I can tell you that in terms of coordination of some of the local opportunities that are going to be made available, that I'm heavily involved in that, and have had conversations with Chief Executive of the Council, with NHS, and also with colleagues in third sector, as well as some of the employers, just in terms of elsewhere. But in terms of the local policing, there are some posts, as you can appreciate, there's some staff who, for their own personal reasons, feel that it's time to move on from the service, and my job is to make sure that the posts that they hold, even under restructuring, that they become available for people who are at risk of, through the changes that are being brought about by restructuring. So I met with staff from the control room yesterday, along with their chief superintendent, and we had lengthy discussion about opportunities that are there and what we're doing in terms of the local job opportunities within the local divisional area. In terms of the what's coming, yes, I can assure you that there's a lot of dialogue about some of those national opportunities that we can exploit because of technology. So some of the computerised systems that we have, if we're going to have a national unit, they have agreed that yes, there's no reason why it could not be based in Dumfries and Galloway. If I can assure members that as soon as some of those agreements are reached, I will keep you updated on it. As you'll appreciate just now, some of the jobs that are in place, it's very much reliant on people being released on voluntary retirement, voluntary redundancy, early retirement, which is their wish to do. And it would be totally remiss of me to start reeling off some jobs that are coming up when people are actually still sitting in their posts and that hasn't been finalised. But those jobs are starting to be released. And the meeting we had with colleagues in the control room, but I'll also appeal to anybody else who's in an area that's at risk. Those jobs are starting to become available now, and people are seriously looking at what skills that they have and try and get that transition of skills across to new areas of business.
Thanks. I understand the reason want to try and secure jobs within the area, but if you're letting somebody go and then just replacing them by somebody that's no going, then there's still job losses there, and they're still losing a lot of expertise within the service. I will take you at your word, Kate, about keeping us informed rather than Rose Fitzpatrick. So I won't take that. You won't keep us informed rather than her. But can Move on to Sean.
Thanks. Yeah, got a specific point, but really just kind of pleased but not surprised to hear that the unit is still a high-performing unit within Police Scotland, but it was also high-performing constabulary when it was Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary. And probably the one thing that we're concerned about is, you know, potentially there is the chance that you're a victim of your own success, because now the resources could be deployed to a less well-performing unit within Scotland. So that's a concern, and I don't know if you've got any feelings on that. Specifically though, back on the priority of road safety, the third bullet point on the objectives states that to improve road safety through an enhanced programme of inputs and initiatives targeted vulnerable members of the community. Can you maybe just clarify for us what the vulnerable members of the community are, and what enhanced inputs and programmes will be developed, and is there a plan behind that? This is an overarching plan, but what we'd like to see is, you know, some more meat in the bones.
In terms of the first question, would we send resource to a less performing area? The answer is no, because all that would happen is we would start yo-yoing back and forward, and if you take a lot of resource away from here that allows us to perform at this level, it may drop, you know, or you're putting additional pressure on people who are working very hard just now anyway. So there's been an agreement that whilst we will support other areas in our, you know, because we are one collective in Police Scotland, it cannot be to the detriment, so you start yo-yoing, because all you'll do is you'll just move this flexible resource roundabout. What we need to do is take the centralised resource that's available to us, whether it's in the West geography or whether the national pool, and make sure we make best use of it. And the example I'll give is obviously we had a missing person down at Annan. There was a lot of local resource put into that, but we recognised that be able to get that inquiry completed, and sadly we were not able to find the person safe and well, but we pull on that additional resource. So part of it is about making sure that everybody understands that asking for help is not a weakness, it's actually a strength, because what you're doing is calling on all that additional resource. What we will do is support big events like Commonwealth Games. I've got a lot of officers here who are public order trained, firearms trained, they've got specialisms. It would be totally remiss of me not to give them some of that operational opportunity that thankfully we don't need it an awful lot here. You know, we do need it, but we don't need it as often as they maybe need to get that training. So it's about that, just that gentle balance of being able to give people exposure to that operational, you know, high-end critical cases, but actually to keep them in here. So we won't move them to help somebody else unless there's an absolute dire need, and only then it would be on the understanding it wasn't to the detriment of the divisional area. It would be over and above what we could commit. And the second part of the question was
on the road safety.
Vulnerable members. It was interesting you asked Hamish the comment about would there be a move to the, you know, the elderly from the young drivers. We've obviously seen through a lot of the fatalities, we chose the vulnerable members because it's not just about young drivers. We've made huge inroads in terms of educating young drivers, and by default actually their parents and some of the adults there about driver behaviour and some of the risks. We recognise that older drivers, we're starting to see a trend of where there are collisions. Some of them have been fatalities, some of them have been high-impact serious accidents which have harmed elderly people, or their actions have caused accidents. The other ones is we've had a few fatalities where alcohol has been involved, and they have unfortunately walked out and collided with vehicles and sustained fatal injuries. So by putting vulnerable members of the community, bearing in mind this is a 3-year plan, we didn't solely want to just keep focusing on young drivers when we were clearly seeing trends from elsewhere that said vulnerable members of the community could be the elderly, it could be people who are under the influence of drink and drugs who happen to be out walking on the roads because they're in a very dark place. So it's about how we go about through the road safety partnership, as well as a lot of our own inputs. And already, if Neil Hewitson, my road policing inspector, would tell you, he's gone out to some community groups to give its road safety guidance. and it's about giving it a context, because everybody thinks, well, it doesn't happen here. Yes, it does. We've got experience of when people are vulnerable, and it might be through alcohol, it might be through age, at both spectrums. It might be through purely distraction, or if you're unwell, or you have some sort of condition. So it's about trying to create this plan that says we will be responsive to the different trends that we see, rather than just focusing on one specific group that we know we're already starting to see improvements in terms of their driver behaviour.
Okay, I've got 5 more speakers, and then that's it. Ian?
I'll be brief. Councillor Bell's made any political points we wanted to make, so I'm not touching any of them. I do think there was a national decision made, which was a bad decision. Don't agree with that at all. But I suppose just for a personal point of view, more than anything, I've seen the benefits actually of a pool of resource at a national level. I've seen it on more than one occasion actually locally, but recently with a family member, I'd just like to place my thanks on record in regards to that. I know at this point in time, Sentinel got really good things to say about Police Scotland.
Okay, Ted?
Thank you, Chair. The question I have has already been touched upon by yourself and Councillor McClung, but what I did notice is that this local plan does not identify any resources. So where and how can we find out that information, and through that, the assurance on how the service will be managed?
Councillor. I can tell you that I have 341 local policing resources. That's bolstered to 365 when I take in the Divisional Road Policing Unit. I have 1,300 resources in the West that are over and above that can support local policing, and a further 1,250 nationally that I can call upon for assistance. Obviously, the other 13 divisional commanders are making the same calls to some of these resources. But I consciously chose not to put them in the police plan, but the arrangement that's been made would be that we would report on them to the Scrutiny Board and keep them updated in terms of what our policing resource is. So I don't have an issue with that going into our reports, to give, again, exception reporting if there's a particular staffing issue that comes in. And one of them I would imagine members would be interested in is what support are we giving to the Commonwealth Games? What would that mean locally? Because the Commonwealth Games is happening at a time in Dumfries and Galloway when we have not insignificant community events, not least of all the busiest weekend for Commonwealth Games is the Wickerman and the Langham Common Riding. So some of that we will report to, but it is not in the plan, but it will be reported on, and that's why I'm more than happy to give out those generic figures. We will not, if I'm being honest, break it down any further, because much as I absolutely know every member here has the best interests of the area, if that became widely known to some of the individuals who either live in our area or travel to our area to commit crime, I wouldn't want them to be able to work out how many officers are on the ground at any one time and therefore take their opportunities to commit crime. So we have those round figure numbers. I'm more than happy to have some dialogue and discussion about them, but my job is to make sure that at the Police and Fire Committee I actually report that to you in terms of any exception reporting or concerns that I have about the staffing levels.
Stephen?
Thank you, Leader. Well, firstly, 3.23 on page 146. Can I assume that where that refers to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service is actually meaning to say the Police Scotland, in terms of the specific council priorities and striving to maintain the existing levels of police and fire service? It's just a typo, so. And if that's the case, once that's confirmed, well, I'll assume it's meaning Police Scotland.
Sorry, 326, the 5 priorities within the local policing plan should not be ranked, and that was a matter raised by, I think it was Councillor Peacock at the meeting, which more than happy with. So we've taken any ranking out in terms of they are all priorities, they all have equal priority, we just need to slot them in an order, and it's just we've taken out the numbers.
So I think it's actually 3.23 on page 146. So the council commitments which are specifically related to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, I presume that should say Police Scotland. But anyway, on the back of that, and I think this is where the frustration arises, especially to do with like control rooms, etc., because it's where the priorities of the council and obviously the National Service, the Police Scotland, maybe don't align. So on page 163, of course, you've got the single outcome agreement, and the police priorities are 1, 2, 3 and 5. And I think the ones we're worried about are 4 and 5. And it's number 4, which is the support and stimulate a local economy, which obviously where the employment issues could be sort of tied into. But it's really priority 5, which aligns with where we're concerned about the security of the region and how that's maintained, and how, of course, we can lobby for decentralised resources from Police Scotland. And I think it's just really to clarify that unfortunately we don't maybe align as we maybe did prior to April the 1st, when it was Dumfries and Galloway. And I think that's really the frustration, and obviously that leads on to the difficulties in bottoming out how we scrutinise and engage effectively. And I think that's maybe one of the things that the detail of which we really need to understand better as we go forward. Thank you.
Okay, we've got Jimmy Dempster, and then last but not least, Ronnie Ogilvie.
My question's been dealt with, Leader, thank you, and I'll take anything else with Kate when I get a chance.
Ronnie?
Thanks, Chair. I just want to make a couple of points quickly. One was, there's a lot of reference here to Community Safety Partnership and other partnership work, and those of us that are nominated for the Community Safety Partnership, the first meeting we had was to remove the councillors. So, we're just getting further and further away from any decision making. You made reference to the frontage and the chair of the police authority, and I won't read it all out, but it goes on about basically saying that we want your say and want the police to listen to what you're saying. Taking on board what the chief executive said about operational things will happen anyway, and we've grown up to understand that. I would like to move that because you're having meetings, things might change. It's the same as what we did in the previous item, is defer this until you've had them meetings so that we get a fuller picture and some of our concerns are taken on board or listened to, and you'll have the opportunity to do that. So it's more or less what we did with the Fire and Rescue Service position. And I move that we do the same here, given the words of assurance from the Chief Executive.
I'm quite happy to second that, because I detect it's the same kind of scenario that members are unhappy with the level of information and the scrutiny and especially on the resources, but not necessarily physical resources as well, but monetary and how we scrutinise that. But there are a number of issues that has been brought up. I don't think there's enough information. It's the same thing. We will be meeting, Mr. House, will be Mr. House, and the police committee under Andrew will be meeting, going up to Cosla, is it? Yep. So there are further information required on this, and we can feed that back in. Is every member happy to do that? Yes, Oliver.
Chair, it's the same question last time, because Superintendent Galloway said that the 32 plans would feed into the Scottish National one. Is that going to be if by deferring this, is that going to mean our plan won't feed in because we haven't agreed it, or is the timescales allowing us to defer and come back?
Councillor, I think...
Sorry, I think if you look at 3.4.2 on this one, it's the same. It's the same as the fire. We won't be able to, should the local plan not be approved in the council, there won't be dialogue. Police Scotland to resolve any areas of dissatisfaction. and it will be submitted to the next available full council.
It was just...
It's part of the national dialogue, yeah.
There was mention of a national plan that was coming out informed by the local ones. Does the time scale for actually deferring this allow us to do that? Because I agree with the move to defer, but I wouldn't like to think that we weren't having our say at national level.
No, we won't have our say. Kate?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, what will happen is they have a copy of our draft plan, and I'll feed back to them the outcome of the meeting today. So the draft plan information will inform the national plan, and then we'll see where it takes us after that. Obviously, any indication from the meeting next week would be really helpful, because we must make sure that we give any updated information.
Okay, members agree? Sorry, yeah, I should have one here somewhere, Alex, about the minutes. But if we can move on to the minutes, if we can find them. What did you use that? Okay. We've already agreed the 6th of February Employment Appeal Subcommittee. Can we agree the minutes? 1st of November. Thank you. 22nd of November. Archie.
Happy second.
6th of December.
Happy second.
Licensing panel, 29th of November.
I'll second that one.
Okay, thanks. 17th of December.
Happy to move, Chair.
7th of January.
Happy to move, Chair.
Second.
4th of February.
Happy to move.
Second.
4th of March.
Happy to move, Chair.
Local Review Body, 11th of December.
Happy to move, Chair.
Happy second.
15th of January. Okay, anybody else in the LRB that was at that meeting? What do you think about it? Okay, Pension Subcommittee. And Social Work Services. Of 21st of February.
Happy to move. Happy to second, Chair.
Okay, so there's one on the 15th of January for the Local Review Body. Can you find it?
Yeah. Chair, is there no also a social work one on the 33? Happy to move as well. It's not in the minutes now.
All the other minutes are for noting. Yeah. So we've just got the one that we haven't done, that says Local Review Body, 15th of January. So we can bring that back. Okay, thanks very much. No other business. Okay.